Ik heb nog 100 bitcoin van mijn vorige opdracht.
Oh, oké.
Dus die kun je goed gebruiken.
Oh, oké.
Ik zit even te denken over. Zo.
Maar dan moet je uiteindelijk wat bouwen, nee toch? Volgens mij is het puur plan.
Ja, je moet ook wat bouwen volgens mij.
Hè?
Primero en clase.
Nee?
De primero en clase.
Nou, ze krijgt volgens mij.
Look like it's not alphabetical.
But the manual one is actually fast. There's no need to set it. Just
Lo leí por encima.
That's also possible.
Yeah, so I
Werkt toch? Niet?
Nee, kijk, dan moet dit moet groen zijn.
Ah,
and then you
Kan
have
zijn
to
dan.
second this over which is
Kijk,
yeah. Yeah.
ja, weet ik wel. Ja.
A very good evening. Good evening, good evening. Welcome to session number 3 in operations and supply chain.
Or I can tell you, I know
Just to
you
get a little bit hold of where we are in the sequence. Recall that these were the topics that we would discuss in operations and supply chain. We started with strategy. First wanted to know what it is that we want to achieve, because all decisions in operations supply chain depend on what your strategy is. And there we discussed the 5 key performance measures, performance objectives, which were all important, and fundamentally the strategy was to make a priority amongst them, which one is most important, and which is second, etc. After that, we dealt with the strategy. We went into design issues, and design issues are all decisions for the long term, the strategic decisions or the tactical decisions, if you wish. And there we just discussed all kinds of items. We talked about process analysis, about throughput time, and about capacity and stuff like that. We saw the process matrix with job shop and flow shop and project, all those things, and we saw the customer order decoupling point, make to order, make to stock, all are design issues. And today we'll get into planning and control, which is more the operational side of operations and supply chain, which is the more short term. So here we assume we know the strategy, we know the design, but now we have to use our processes to the best of our abilities. And so that's the topic of today. But before getting into that, there is a mini case that I would like to start with, which is on Boeing Dreamliner, which is more related to the design issues, especially outsourcing. The question of whether we outsource or not, obviously, is a strategic decision, a long-term decision, therefore a design decision. Well, I did not discuss it in depth the previous lecture, so I thought let's do it by this mini case of Boeing Dreamliner. Well, what we can say of Boeing Dreamliner, that it's a commercial success. Anybody of you have already flew in a Dreamliner? You have been in there? Yeah? How was it? No, flying is never nice, but yeah, you liked it? It's good. Yeah, well, commercially, it's a very successful plane. However, as you have read in the case in constructing the plane, in designing it, and making it all come true, that really was a what we call a logistics nightmare or a supply chain nightmare. And so we might wonder, not from a commercial perspective, but from a supply chain perspective, did Boeing do the right thing? Or have they gone wrong? And if so, where did they go wrong? So what would we say? Has Boeing made a mistake in the design of the Dreamliner, or did it all go smoothly? What is your feeling? Pretty open question, so.
Well, it's not about the design, right? It's about the planning of how they got the parts together.
Yeah.
So maybe the design of the plane was fine, but maybe they made the wrong decisions to put too many things outside of their home base.
They outsource too much. That's
Yeah,
what you say.
yeah.
Why would you say that?
Because they had also apparently a lot of delays and a lot of let's say bureaucracy because of the outsourcing. Yeah, so maybe the contracts were not.
Poor contracting, yeah, okay. Good observation. What more?
I think it also depends on the line of business, because considering the airline industry and the plane is a bit complex.
Very complex,
Yeah,
actually.
very complex.
And designing a new plane, a lot of innovation, very complex.
And if you have more vendors who are giving you parts, then the whole synchronization and coordination makes it more difficult.
Yeah.
So both complexity of the task, plus a lot of vendor coordination, and that could lead to all that.
Complexity is a killer for your efficiencies. That's what we have seen, right? The more complexity, the more turbulence there is, the harder it gets. Yeah. Okay, let's start with analyzing why did Boeing do the outsourcing in the first place? They're not used to this. They are basically doing everything in-house until the Dreamliner. So why did they do outsourcing at all? What were the reasons for doing so?
Because they lost their competitive advantage.
They lost their competitive advantage. Okay, good. Or at least they want to gain one, right?
Yeah.
Bringing a new plane to the market, creating the commercial success that they have now.
Well, it always has to do with trying to use the knowledge of others.
Yeah, using the knowledge of others. It's a very good reason for outsourcing, is it not? You cannot have all the knowledge in the house, and there's so many innovations around. So why don't we use the best of the best? You cannot be the best of the best in everything. That's strategy. So let's team up with those that are better at other things. Usually a very good reason for outsourcing, and definitely in this case, that's also there. Other reasons for outsourcing.
I think it's based on the line core competence. What's your core competence?
Yeah.
Is it manufacturing these different parts or bringing it all together?
Yeah. Good.
And the
Yeah.
same applies to different things which are also.
So again, this is the idea of let's team up with those that have a competitive advantage at different things. So we make a team. Well, there are other reasons for, in this particular case, for doing outsourcing.
It's also frustrating.
Yeah, and so why do we need the other countries? It's different than other organizations. Yeah, this is typical for aircraft. So if you want to sell your plane worldwide, then frequently the larger countries say, yes, that's nice, we want to buy them, but then we also want a piece of the action. We also know this in Holland for the Joint Strike Fighter. Are you familiar with it?
So
Fighter plane, they say, yes, we want to buy it, but this costs billions of euros. But then also we want part of the development or part of the maintenance or whatever it is, we want to have that in-house. So if you want to sell your plane worldwide, then probably you have to give at least part of the production or part of the development or part of the maintenance to these other countries as well. That is also a good reason for outsourcing.
maybe also because Airbus is also doing that.
Yeah, we'll get to Airbus in a moment. That is a very good. So their competitor is also doing so. That is a strategy that is apparently successful. There's another very good reason for that outsourcing.
Pricing model.
Pricing model? Meaning?
Sometimes it could be cheaper.
Yeah, cost efficiencies, that might be. Well, this is the development of an airplane, so maybe that is. But frequently you outsource because the other countries can do it cheaper. Maybe not so much here, but that is a.
It's in the same case like HP, so then they can just ship the parts to the final client's country and assembly in the last place.
Yeah, but this is all about the development, not so much about the manufacturing. So if we talk about manufacturing, then you might be correct. But this is all about the development of a new plane, which is a different environment altogether. What about the risk, financial risk? Would it be high for the development of such a plane? Yeah, probably too high for Boeing to do it all in-house. So frequently you also see partners in the development of new things because you just don't want to bear the financial risk. And so I think, at least in this case, these are three very good reasons for doing the outsourcing. You want the best specialists, the core competences should be matched. You want to sell the plane to those countries, so you have to give them a piece of the action. And you don't want to bear the financial risk. So very good reasons for outsourcing. What would be against outsourcing? Why wouldn't you do it?
Something goes wrong as figure it out.
It's a bureaucratic nightmare, as you can clearly witness here.
Makes it very complex.
Yeah, but isn't it complex in-house also?
Yeah, as well, but less.
Why? Very good. Why would it be?
Well, communication is more easy.
Sorry?
Communication is more easy.
Communication it gets really hard. Okay, we have to compare it here. Where you do everything in-house, like Boeing used to do. With now we do all the outsourcing with all the parts around the globe. Well, everybody would immediately say this is much more complex, right? But let's try to get in why is it more complex? So we have all the international things, which makes the communications very hard. We have the different time zones. We have different cultures, probably even. There is a very nice word in the case that says tribal knowledge. Tribal knowledge. What is that? Tribal knowledge? What does it refer to? Yeah, it's a family business. But what is this thing, tribal knowledge? What do they mean by that?
Culture.
Yeah, it's pretty much part of their culture.
And people are used to certain quirks or workarounds, ways of working.
Yeah, they are basically the tribal knowledge is that people know their way in the organization. They know exactly who is doing what in the organization. They meet each other, birthday parties, they are family. And whenever there is an issue, they always know how to solve it. This is also tacit knowledge frequently in organizations. It's that problem solving that managers don't even see. People just know their way, they work around, they meet people, they talk to people, and they solve it on the spot without managers even seeing it. This is frequently underestimated in organizations. This tacit knowledge, this tribal knowledge that goes on in the organizations. And that was very strong at Boeing. They had a very strong company culture. This whole idea, can you outsource mom and can you outsource dad? So, okay, then you know this goes to their heart. This is a very strong feeling that they are having, that they are solving this problem immediately. Well, as soon as you outsource, this is an obvious remark, but frequently forgotten. As soon as you outsource something of your organization, you create an interface between yourself and the other organization. And this interface needs to be managed. Before, it was managed inside your organization frequently by this tacit knowledge, this tribal knowledge. You were not even aware of that. But if you outsource it, you might easily forget all those things that went on automatically. But you now have to manage it yourself. You have to create an interface with IT, and you have to have video conferencing and all kinds of things you have to put in place in order to replace the tacit knowledge. But if you were not aware of the tacit knowledge, it's easy to forget it, right? So if you outsource only one thing already, you create an interface. If you outsource two things, you have two interfaces, and before you know it, you have 100 interfaces. Okay, one thing you should never forget about supply chain management is that the more players there are in supply chain, the harder it gets. the harder it becomes to manage everything, to keep everything together. And I think that is basically what happened here. Did we read anything in the case on how Boeing was doing the communication? How Boeing was managing the interfaces?
Well, they had simulators set up in the different locations.
Yeah, always good, simulators.
Yeah.
And probably they did a lot of video conference and don't know what. But it's very hard to replace this tacit knowledge. And that's basically, I think, the key lesson, at least for me, of this case. Yes, of course, you have to outsource because you need the expertise and you need the finance and everything. But as soon as you outsource, you have to have fantastic communication between all these things. And the more you outsource, the better this should be. And that is apparently too hard in this case. I think the case was from 2011 or what? After that, it went on for at least another 5 or 6 years. One problem after another. And that really has to do with the lack of interfaces. Now we get to Airbus. They're doing the same. But we don't read about these problems about Airbus. It's only here at Boeing. How come?
Well, that's how they started.
Yeah. At least it's the European zone. Well, already that helps. It's much closer together. And
That's how the company started.
yeah, that's how they started. Of course, every change is difficult. So if you did it always in-house and now you outsource everything, yeah, that's a huge gap. If you are used to international development, and already you have established the contacts and there's no such thing as tribal knowledge, at least it is between the different countries. So it's also the change management that probably went wrong here. So I thought interesting case to look at it. The key thing again, as soon as you outsource, you create interfaces, and these are easily underestimated. Because before people were just managing the tribal knowledge or the tacit knowledge. Okay, more about supply chain next time we meet. We get to the topic of today, planning and control. And just to demonstrate how difficult planning and control is, I can talk about this course, which also needs to be planned and controlled, and something went wrong here. Bottom line is next week, no class. That is my wrongdoing, because I'm on vacation next week, which was planned, but I had somebody else coming in. But unfortunately, he had a baby boy the other day, which was also planned. Somehow, in all kind of medical planning, he could not make it next week. So we'll postpone the beer game, which was planned for next week, Tuesday, till the Tuesday after that. And I will post on the line how exactly we are going to control here. But bottom line is no class next week. But then, of course, you can work on the case, which is then due a week later. So I will post exactly how it's solved. So planning is a difficult thing, and controlling even more difficult. So that's what we'll discuss today. Again, the idea is we know the strategy, we know the design, and now we have to use the time and the resources optimally. And a couple of topics I like to discuss. Let's see how much time we have. The first one is control. After that, we get into planning. After all, it's planning and control. So let's do that. Matching demand and supply. Then we inevitably get to inventory management. And if there's still time, I'll get into shop floor control with push, pull, and buffer rope. Okay, let's start with the idea of control. And we are all pretty much familiar with control from a financial perspective. You're all working in firms. Every firm has a planning and control cycle. Basically, you make a year budget, and then every quarter or so you do a check, your quarter numbers, and then you see, hey, are we still on target? If not, then you steer in the right direction. We have something similar in operations and supply chain. Also there we have all kinds of measures which we like to control for. So we have performance measures, and we watch them over time. And fundamentally the idea of control is we monitor our performance, and as long as everything is according to plan, then we are happy, nothing is wrong. But when it's outside the limits, then we start to worry. This is briefly measured by traffic lights. So if something is green, we're all happy, nothing's wrong. If something is yellow or orange, we get a little bit worried. If something is red, oh, wait a minute, we have to do something. And that is basically the idea of control. So we take our performance and monitor it over time, and we see whether it's still as we expect it. So what type of performance are we looking for here in operations and supply chain? What type of performances would we measure and control for? Good. You get the hang of it after 3 weeks. These are, of course, all these things. These are all the key performance measures. So we want to measure them and to maintain them within a certain control. So that is the first thing why we do this. There's actually another reason why we also do all these measurements, which is for improvement. But more, this is actually, so today we'll talk about planning and control, but the next item is improvement. We also want to have performance measures for improvement reasons. And I'm stressing this point a little bit because in my working life I've made mistakes with this many times. So why would it be important to have measurements for improvement reasons? Why is that needed? To take measurements on cost and quality and speed.
Because
For improvement reasons.
competition is doing it as well. So.
Competition is doing it as well. So competitive advantage and all those things.
Making things efficient, and benchmarking, and making
Yeah,
all the
okay.
aspects of it.
Okay, benchmarking. Yeah, but benchmarking is not improvement, right?
So you improve and then benchmark, and then again you try to optimize.
Now you're saying that we need to improve. Which I totally agree. But why do we take measurements for improvements? More profit. Yeah, we need to improve to have more profit.
Control.
I'm specifically saying, yes, this is all true. We want to improve, sure, that's true. But why are measurements so important for having improvements?
If you don't measure,
Otherwise, you want
You don't know.
you don't know. So
If you don't measure, you don't know.
you're not a mind project in someone's head, but
Well, you can't measure, you cannot.
Okay, that's control, right? I fully agree. What you don't measure, you can't control. That's why we need to measure. Reason number one. I fully agree. You might say, I have a planned improvement and I want to control for my planned improvements. But that's again a control issue. But there's another more psychological reason why we need to measure for improvement. Motivation. Very good. Explain.
I mean, everything goes well when you, well, the employer is also aware of it, then, you know, it might lead to higher.
Yeah, it's a psychological thing. Everything you say, of course, is correct. But I want to stress this point. Okay, if you want to change things, if you want to improve things, you want to change things, what's the first thing we have with change? Resistance to change, right? Number one in the book of change is there is resistance to change. Well, we can argue about that in length, but frequently people get out of the comfort zone and they don't like it, and is it really necessary, and why should we do that, and all this thing. And of course, you are a great leader, and you explain that it's really necessary, and motivate and stimulate them to make the change actually. But after some time, these people say, yeah, I work very hard, I do strange things. Does it bring anything to the company? And if you then say, yes, but it feels good, yeah, they say, yeah, it feels good, but I want to see the progress, right? I want to see the fruits of my efforts. And if you then have not made measurements, you can never demonstrate the fruit of all those efforts. You all know the saying, celebrate successes, right? If you want to motivate people, you have to celebrate your successes. Yeah, how do you demonstrate a success? Well, for instance, by having these measurements. Well, you might also say, yes, this is very obvious, so what are we talking here? I'm just talking from my own perspective. I've been involved in many improvement projects where we forgot to make the zero measurements. And after some times, we had to demonstrate that we were on the right track, but we could never demonstrate that because we didn't have the measurements. It's really a bad thing to have, I can assure you. Anyway, there are two reasons for doing all the measurements. Today we'll talk about control, and later in the lecture we'll talk about improvements. So if in operations and supply chain, we talk about control, then basically you want to have measurements, and based on those measurements, you want to make control. So we basically say we need a dashboard, some kind of measurements, a Gecko board or something like that. Who has that in the organizations?
I saw it.
Monitoring?
Yeah.
You have that? How frequently do you get those measurements?
Well, I actually work in monitoring, so
Oh,
I
you
build-
make the.
Yes.
Okay. If you don't have it, you have to go to him.
Yeah, real time, and of course also you need to have like alerting, so not only a dashboard but also emails, text messages.
Beeping and traffic lights and warning signals. Very good. Who has those words? Yeah.
Yeah, we do weekly metrics.
Yeah. Very good. How frequently do you get them?
No, we do weekly.
Weekly. Yeah. Good. So you see the operational part of it, right? You get them very frequently, real time, daily, weekly. There are some people who you start up your computer in the morning, you immediately get some things, or you have an app on your phone or whatever it is. So these measurements basically is what is there. I also have worked in many organizations where we didn't know anything, which was very uncomfortable because you always have the idea we do good, but not. Okay, so we need a dashboard, and we also need what we call a steering wheel in order to be able to, if we are too high or too low, then that we can steer in the right direction. It's a little bit like driving a car. You have a dashboard and say, hey, we're in the wrong direction, and then we have a steering wheel that moves you in the right direction. So fundamentally, within operations, we have the so-called backend mechanism, as we call it. So we have our transformation process or supply chain process or any other process. From that, we take measurements. Then we have some norm associated with it. Then we have a performance evaluation. We are red or green. And if we are red, we make an analysis and take actions. And then we feed that back. And so we get in this feedback mechanism. So when I'm in the class, I'm always a bit worried this is too obvious and simple and straightforward. However, in real life, frequently, there are all kinds of things. Either we don't have measurements, or we don't have a performance evaluation, or we don't have actions. It really needs to be all there. This also demonstrates why we have an evaluation of the course after the course, because that's for us then our measurements, and then we can see whether it's up to standard and whether some change is needed. And frequently why people don't fill in those questionnaires is, why don't we fill in the questionnaires? Yeah, they say we don't know what happened with these things, and are they seen as important? And I already did the class, so I have no advantage. So really, something needs to be done in order to get all this information. This is the well-known plan, do, check, act kind of thing, right? We have a plan, planning and control. Then we do something, and then the check is the control part, and then we act according to it. Well, actually, the plan, do, check, act is known as the Deming wheel, and that it was not for control reasons, that was actually, again, for improvement reasons. The original Deming wheel was never there for control, was always for improvement. The whole idea of Edward Deming was to first think, hey, where can we make an improvement? Then implement the improvement on a small scale, very important small scale, a pilot, a test environment, and then when it works, but we can only see whether it works when we do the check. When it works, then we act by implementing it on a larger scale. But that was the whole idea of Deming. So of course we make it into a control cycle. Okay, so well, this is all very nice and pretty straightforward, at least from a theoretical perspective. But I also want to give some warning here. I'm a bit hesitant to do that in the big data group. This is to say that numbers do not always represent facts. Well, either you think he's crazy, or you think, of course, I fully agree. I'm saying this with a little bit of emphasis here, which is basically based on this book. Did anybody have heard about this? Managers, not MBAs. Okay. MBA is for managers, right? Well, Mintzberg wrote at that time, I think the book is more than 10 years old, or even older, that At that time, he felt that business schools and MBAs had totally lost their way. They were totally in the wrong direction. They were educating the spreadsheet wonders of the world, who could really manage the whole organization from one spreadsheet, and then something is red, then immediately somebody has to be fired, and everything is green, then the organization is running smoothly. They didn't know diddly about the organization, but they could really calculate with the spreadsheets. And I'm saying this also to you guys, with all the quantitative background, etc. Managing is something else than collecting numbers and seeing from behind your screen whether something is right or wrong. What could go wrong this way if you only look at the numbers?
Qualitative aspect.
Sorry?
The qualitative, so quantitative is more KPI driven. Qualitative is how you interact with the employees.
Yeah, true.
Motivated.
But why can't we just look at an organization from a quantitative point of view? Why is that not possible? At least that's what Mintzberg claims, and I fully agree with that.
Maybe because they're emotional anglers.
Yeah, we are emotional people, and emotions are very real. So emotions you cannot track in numbers. Yeah. You want to say something?
Well, I can do. No, I mean, you can't get everything tracked in numbers. But also, if you have if everyone knows that you're just looking at the numbers, then you encourage people to basically focus on the numbers themselves rather than what they're really meant to represent. So you get people gaming the system.
Exactly. That's I've used it here. I really like this term, the watermelon metrics. So if you really push people, say, I want you to perform very well on this KPI, then people say, you want to perform well on this KPI, perform well on this KPI, whether it's good for the company or for my customers, etc. That's apparently not important. I just perform okay for the KPI. And that leads to green KPIs, everything is green, but the whole organization rotten from the inside, or red, watermelon metrics. So it leads to really people doing what the numbers represent, where you just want them to do the right thing. But what exactly is then the right thing? So the whole idea obviously is here that numbers do represent some facts, but you also have to take your managerial judgment and your feeling, emotional feelings, alongside this. There has been many debates on this, at least in the Netherlands. For instance, hospitals did not want to publish their mortality rates. So there are Dutch newspapers that want to collect all the mortality rates from all the hospitals and want to make a neat list of those hospitals that have a high mortality rate and a low mortality rate. So they make these nice tables. But the hospitals didn't want to bring this to the public. Why not? So
Well, bad for their reputation.
Right?
It's not good for their reputation.
Yeah, it's not good for their reputation, but yeah, it's so understood. So.
The big problem in this case was also that we have academic hospitals.
Right.
So we get they get all the heart patients, heart-free patients, and then although they might be performing well, they have a higher mortality rate than the regional hospital.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. The academic hospitals have more difficult patients. Everybody would agree, hence they have a higher mortality rate. So what's the problem? Why not publish them?
Well, maybe
you're absolutely right.
if the hospitals are going to steer on that and reviews certain patients.
That's the whole idea. Before you know it, this comes known to the public, and the public doesn't know diddly about all these backgrounds about academic hospitals and more difficult patients and stuff like that. They just see a neat table, and of course, the one with the lowest mortality rate must be the best hospital. What other choice do we have? And therefore, it becomes a thing in itself, where we all know that underlying these numbers, there are many more other factors that you should take into account also. So before you know it from a distance, there's just one number that explains everything. And that's a bit this idea of the spreadsheet wonders of the world, that only look at the table and understand the whole world from a simple table and say, this is a good hospital, this is a bad hospital, where we know that, of course, many other factors also play a role. But then you have to have many more numbers, and then everything comes to be very complex. Yeah, that is management. Many numbers, many things to weight, etc. So, anyway. Cut a long story short, yes. collect all the KPIs, but don't take them too seriously. They're just indicators of what you try to manage. They're not the absolute truth. Again, I'm stressing this fact. We all know this, but in reality, this frequently goes wrong. And numerous organizations has gone wrong by taking it too serious. So you have to take them serious, but not too serious. It's a balancing act, and that's fundamentally the art of management. That's what we are studying. Managers. Hopefully, you MBAs become managers. That's the whole objective here. Right? Okay, more enough about that. Let's move on to the next topic, which is matching demand and supply. Obviously, in operation supply chain, matching demand and supply is one of the key areas. We have to look at our capacity and match that to the demand, whatever we are having. So we are talking about planning here. All kinds of plannings within my field. So we have capacity planning and aggregate planning and master production planning and sequencing and scheduling, etc. The one I'm going to focus on now is the more aggregate planning, the more longer term planning. So we have the capacity planning, which is actually a design issue. What should be the capacity of my factory, or how many offices should I have, or how many patients do I want to treat for the longer term. But in aggregate planning, we are just wondering, of all the patients that we are having in the hospital, how much personnel do we need to have for the coming period? Or when we look here at UvA, then every year we have to make some type of scheduling in terms of the number of classrooms that each faculty wants to have. And then we say, oh, whatever, how many groups will we have? So many MBA groups, so many master, so many bachelor. And then we say, okay, we want this total of classrooms. And whether they're for MBA or for master or for bachelor, that doesn't really matter. And then only later we get into detailed planning, so that finally we know that on Tuesday, the 20th of February, it's this group sitting in this particular classroom. But if we would have been rescheduled an hour ago, we would have sat in another classroom. But that is sequencing and scheduling. So we're now looking at the aggregate planning. We are planning for the whole organization over a longer period. And if we talk about matching demand and supply, you might see that that goes wrong frequently. Just have some clippings here. My favorite here is Black Saturday. Do you know Black Saturday? Black Saturday is where all of France goes on vacation the first Saturday in August. All go on vacation, all to the south, obviously. And then we have traffic jams of more than 500 kilometers. You might also say, well, why should that all be on the same day? Why don't we spread that a little bit? But somehow that is a difficulty in France, at least. We have all kinds of matching issues, and that's what we are going to discuss a little bit. And so matching demand and supply is actually precisely that. It's matching demand and supply so that we make sure that these are kind of equal. Now, we have two areas here. One is called aggregate planning. That's basically where we plan our capacity. So how many items would we be able to make? How many customers would we be able to handle in a given period? And the other side to the story is what we call demand management. That is managing how many customers we would have in a certain period. Who would be responsible in the organization for aggregate planning? Who is basically doing that? Which department, which people, which function? Sorry? Executives? Yeah, but from which area? No, not from strategy. Sorry? Operations? Operations, yeah. It's we. We are responsible for doing the aggregate planning. That's us. Executives, obviously. MBAs, soon to be, right? But we are in operations, supply chain, we are for the aggregate planning. So a lot of planning goes on there. Who in the organization is responsible for the demand management? Who are doing that? Yeah, sales, marketing, commercial department. And here you get it. So if we want to match demand and supply, then immediately we see that these two functions have to work together, right? They have to join hands. This is a joint effort of both operations and sales people. And that's what we call nowadays sales and operation planning, S&OP. Who of you is involved in S&OP? Who's doing that? Yeah.
Only analytics part of it.
Only the analytics part. Yeah, but at least you're part of the process.
Yeah.
You come up with the data so that these people have the right data to work with. That's what I imagine. Yeah, I was just thinking that needs to make the statement S&OP is very hot now in organizations, but I don't know, let's be careful a little bit, because if only one is doing it here, then you might say, how hot can that be? It's really one of the key topics nowadays in my area. I'm a bit surprised with that because it's a very fundamental thing, right? But somehow the sales and operations are having a hard time getting along. Okay, I like to talk, give you a little anecdote on that. That's on Twix. No Twix, you're familiar with Twix? Bar, candy bar. It's a bit of an old story. Nowadays we have left Twix and right Twix and all these commercials. This is a little bit from the old days of Twix, and at that time, the commercial people, the salespeople of Twix had a very good idea. They say, let's promote Twix, let's make a promotion, and we do that by selling Twix 25% longer. Nowadays we have mini Twix and Twix bites, and we have Twix extra large, but at that time you had just one Twix, a regular size, and let's sell them for the same price, but then 25% longer. So what is the underlying idea? Well, if people come to the retailer or to the candy machines, they see all the different brands. You have Mars and Snickers and Bounty and God knows what, and of course Twix. And then you would see, hey, Twix 25% extra for the same money. So let me buy Twix. That I get more for the same payment. So then they would eat the Twix and they say, hey, actually it's pretty nice. And then we have repeat buys, and that's the way we stimulate the demand for Twix. Does that work? Is that a good promotion? Twix 25% extra from a commercial point of view. Does it work?
Yeah.
Some people are a little bit hesitant here.
As long as it doesn't cost more.
The short summary of this type of advertisement is it works. Marketing works, advertisement works. That's why we have the pop-ups on our telephone all the time and all the commercials. That works. So actually it does stimulate the demand. So that's a very good idea from our friends from marketing. From commercial people, now we bring this to operations. So if we have a bright idea, we want to sell Twix 25% extra. What do the operations people feel about this?
It's a problem.
Change. Like change. Nobody likes change. Well, operations people don't like change at all.
Yeah.
Very enthusiastic.
No, it's a hell. This is really a nightmare to operations. Because we have been producing Twix, mass manufacturing all the time already for more than 20 years of this size. All of a sudden, the Twix has to be 25% longer. Are you crazy? Our machines are not made for that. We have never done it in the past. So how come all of a sudden these things have to be 25% longer? Yes, but sales says you have to do it because that is our idea, and we got the okay from the CEO. So, okay. Well, okay, there the engineers go. They go, okay, let's do this then. And after a long, hard work, we are able to make the Twix 25% longer. But that's not the end of it. Of course, they have to be wrapped, so we have to have a new wrap. Okay. New thing, and then they have to be put in boxes. Of course, the boxes are too small now. We have to have new boxes, and the small boxes go into big boxes. Again, we need to change, and these big boxes go into trucks. Again, that doesn't fit. But the worst is still to come. Finally, these Twixes go to the retailers and to the candy machines. And you already see it coming. The candy machines. These are 25% longer. They fit or they don't fit. And the end of the story, of course, they fit in, but they never come out. So they have constant problems at the candy machines where these things don't fall, and they have to call the mechanic, and everybody gets crazy. So from operation perspective, we say first we have to adopt the machines, then we have all the boxes, then we have all the mechanics running around to fix all these problems with the candy machines. If we add everything up in terms of additional cost and additional revenue, this is a minus. But if we do it the traditional way, sales tells operations what to do, and then operations, they are alarmed and they think it's hell, and they think the salespeople are crazy, but they still have to do it. And the end of the story, of course, that's negative for you. And this is still going on in many organizations nowadays, where sales is basically claiming to operations, say, you just have to do what we say, and operations saying, don't make me crazy. Act normal. I've been in many of these fights, and of course, sometimes people really hate each other, and sometimes they are trying to work together. But the whole idea of sales and operations is we have to do this jointly. And again, in the classroom, that seems to be straightforward. In real life, this appears to be very hard. What's the most difficult issue here? Why are these walls there? Why do we keep fighting in organizations?
It's easy to make promise. So operations need to deliver it.
Yeah, I think that the aim of both of the teams are very different. Sales wants to sell it.
Yeah.
Most of the time, they do not care how it's coming.
Yeah.
Operation aspect of it. Operation wants to make it efficient, and there are changes.
They have different objectives, conflicting objectives even. Okay, then we have to have joint objective. That's the whole idea of the strategy of an organization. Very good. But
The performance dashboard of sales says that it isn't improved.
True.
But the one that Raymond says it's not.
True. So it's incentives, internal incentives. There's non-aligned incentives. That's what I'm saying. When we talk about strategy, one of the key points of having a strategy, why would we have a strategy? Because of the alignment issue. So these need to be aligned. It's a strategic issue. It's also frequently, in my experience, political. Who has the power in the organization? Who is the most shining person in the organization? Who gets the biggest bonuses and the brightest everything? And frequently, in organizations, that's sales.
Yeah.
But when we talk about sales and operations planning, they should act as equals. There are two sides to the story, and we have to work together, and we have a joint objective. And so the hard part of sales and operations is not collecting the data, which is hard enough, as you all know. It's not having a joint strategy, which is hard enough. It is feeling as equals, feeling both as part of the same organization in which we really have to work together. And especially from organizations where that are sales dominant, sales and operations planning is a very hard thing to do. Okay, so that's basically all in this story. We have to combine this. Okay, the way I will approach it is let's start where we are hired for. We do our aggregate planning, and then after some time I will come to demand management. Okay, so here the assumption is that we have asked sales, what is your projected sales forecast? How much are we going to sell? And then we in operations have to match whatever they demand from us, right? So that's the idea. Okay, so here the idea is that over time we have a fluctuating demand, which is the big red line. That's the forecasted sales that we got from our friends from marketing. They say, and you see it fluctuating a little bit. We have seasonal patterns, as we say. It might be weekly patterns or monthly patterns or yearly patterns. There's some fluctuation there. Would it be normal in organizations that we have some fluctuations, or is this usually stable?
Depends on the product.
Yeah, it depends on the product. But what's the normal pattern? Are there fluctuations, or is everything stable? I think 95 of all organizations have fluctuating demand, one way or another, for all kinds of reasons. So there is a fluctuating demand, let's assume that here. And now from operations, we are wondering how to cope with that fluctuating demand. And there are two, what we call pure strategies, but there are actually only ends to a spectrum. Most strategies would be something in between. The word strategy is a bit strange here because we are talking planning and control, which is operational, but we call that a strategy for one reason or another. So the first strategy is what we call the level strategy. The level strategy is let's produce the same amount in each period. So we keep everything stable. And so what's the idea? Here there's less demand than what we produce, so we will have an inventory. Keep some items on inventory, and when the demand is higher than what we produce, we sell off the inventory again. And then of course we have to balance that out a little bit, and if you do that right, then you can produce the same amount in each period. And we talk more about services, then we have a queue or a waiting line or a waiting list. That's more the other way around. Okay, so the level strategy. What is good about the level strategy? Why would we like that?
Very stable.
Yeah, stable. So
Predictability.
yeah, predictability.
Utilizing your resources.
People are okay, get them closer. We have to go back, right? So why do we like it? It's good for?
Dependability.
Yeah, especially for efficiency, right? So this is very efficient because it's the same thing every day. I can give you from an operations and supply chain perspective, the level strategy is our dream. That is what every operations and supply chain wants. Every day is exactly the same, then you can really utilize all your resources, and we know all variability is a killer. So all fluctuations we don't like. We have seen that last time. The fundamental law of factory physics. We go with the queuing and stuff like that. We don't like that. In operations, we like level strategy. That's our goal. That's what we aim for. And that's mainly because of the efficiencies. And yes, we have some inventories there, but at least our operations are smooth. The other end of the spectrum is what we call the chase strategy. This chase strategy basically means that we follow the demand very neatly. If the demand is low, we produce less. If the demand is high, we produce a lot. And so the green line exactly follows the demand pattern. What would be good about this?
Less inventory.
More sales, bro. More sales? No, the sales are the same. This is just an operations perspective. Sales is the red line, and it's always the same.
No inventory.
No inventory?
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, it offers a lot of flexibility and freshness. And so if we have a fashion type of product, then we are able to follow whatever the demand, Zara type of thinking. Right? So this offers us a lot of flexibility, adaptability to customer needs. Frequently organizations have something in between. They like to get close to level, but they have to follow the demand a little bit. That's what we call a mixed trend. So you balance them out a little bit. So depending on the situation, you go for level or you go for. Just to highlight how this works in practice, I'd like to share a case with you. So Batavus. Are you familiar with Batavus? That people obviously are, but internationals might also be familiar. It's a bicycle manufacturer. One of the larger bicycle manufacturer that we have in the Netherlands. They have their manufacturing plant or assembly plant actually in Heerenveen, up north in Friesland. They are located and or some years ago I had a project with them, and so when I drove to Heerenveen, which was a 1.5 hour drive or so, on the way there I was thinking, what would these people have? A level strategy or a chase strategy? Of course, nobody's wondering that, except if when you're a professor in operations, you start thinking of these kind of things. And I thought, well, this is a durable consumer good, or a bicycle manufacturer. Okay, first, do they have a fluctuating demand, do you think, in bicycles over the year?
Yeah.
When would there be a peak? Any idea?
Spring.
Yeah. Basically, now in the winter, hardly any sales in bicycles, but as soon as the sun starts shining again in spring, then everybody wants to go outdoor. When summertime is there, when we go from winter time to summertime, that is kind of the signal to everybody to start buying new bicycles. And that ends, let's say, shortly after the summer vacation of the children. Then the children need to have a new bike for going to school, and after that it drops again. So there's a huge fluctuation of the year. So we do have fluctuations there, and I was thinking, well, probably they have a level strategy, because that's what operations is all about. And I was totally wrong. They have almost, not exactly, but almost a pure chase strategy. So they are following their demand very neatly. I was really taken away by that. Why would you do that? Any idea why they would do that? Why would Batavus not have a level strategy, but rather a chase strategy? Why did they choose for that? That was their strategic choice. Yeah, so you might say inventory is too expensive, but
every year
that was not their reason. Could be, but that was not their reason.
But it's every year the same, so they know how much it will
I think
increase
the
and
other way
decrease.
around.
Yeah,
They
the
can
sales
plan for it.
pattern were on an aggregate level pretty forecastable. So that was not the reason for them to do the chase. On an aggregate level.
To keep changing designs, or
Sorry?
to change designs of the bikes to attract new customers.
The model?
Yeah, getting close. So what actually they did was make the bicycle into a fashion product. They have a new catalog of bicycles every year. I totally missed that trend. I do actually have a Batavus bicycle. I already have it for more than 15 years, the same bicycle. So I totally missed this trend. The trend in bicycle land is each and every year we have new catalog with new bicycles, with new features, especially in electric bikes. Nowadays, a lot of new electric bikes, rapid developments there. And Batavus says, we have a fashion product. And we don't want to produce products for the next year. We want only to produce them for a given period. So they are like Zara, but then in bicycles. But then again, you might say, why do we have this? Why don't we have stability? Why does a bicycle have to be a fashion product? Any idea? Why are they doing that? Because they have to come up with new designs all the time, and of course you can have your efficiencies in terms of level.
Make them different from the competitors.
Yeah, competitive advantage. So who are their main competitor? Yeah, you would say Gazelle and Sparta. Actually, they're all part of the same company, and they don't consider them as their main competitor.
Second-hand market.
Yeah, second-hand market, getting close.
Chinese.
Chinese manufacturer. Okay, Holland is a big bicycling country, as you all know, in Amsterdam. Everybody is biking, and that's also the rest of Holland. But what is also a big bicycle country in the world? China. What can China do very well? Mass manufacturing at very low prices. So when the mass market comes to Holland and you also have a standardized product, you're about to be lost. Moreover, in the Netherlands, there are many people of my age and even older that have too much time and too much money, and they want to be a bit friendly. Sports and these things. So they buy constantly new bicycles, just they have to spend the money on something, and so why not a new bicycle? There's a new bicycle on the market, so let's buy that. So there is really a market there for that. So anyway, to cut a long story short, they made the bicycle into a fashion product, and because of that, they didn't want to keep inventories, and level strategy means inventories. We don't want that, so we follow the demand. And this is the way they did it. So there's a bit of scale here. So their base level manufacturing is done by their regular employees. So they have a set of regular employees, and they produce already. These people are flexible. They have flexible contracts. That is, they work longer hours in the summer than in the winter. They have a steady pay. Let's say they always are paid for 40 hours per week. But in the summer they work 42 hours, and in the winter they work 38 hours. So already there is some flexibility there. And here all the capacity is determined by the amount of people. So already these people are flexible. If that is not enough, so if the demand grows, then the first thing they do is outsourcing. There's a social workplace just across the street that immediately takes part of the production. So that's the first layer. If then demand goes up, then they have what they call a callable workforce. So these are people on the list that they say, hey, demand goes up again, can you come and help us? And that's how they grow their volume. If that is not enough, they have temporary workers. And if that is not enough, they do overtime. So depending on the demand, they either increase or decrease their volume. So this is how they create the flexibility. This is how they create their chase strategy. So why would they rather have callable workers than temporary workers? What's the
better knowledge?
Yeah, they're semi-skilled. They have had some training, and they can do temporary workers first. I was a bit surprised here why they would take overtime as the last layer. Why not start with overtime? That would make more sense. People are working there anyway, and they know the way around. So why have all the callable and the temporary workers first? But the manager said, I really don't want to do that. I want to use this as the last layer, not as one of the first. Any idea why?
Well, the regular employees, if they have to manage with overtime, a lot of overtime.
Yeah.
And with a big group, it's just a little bit for everyone.
Yeah, true. So if you use it as a first layer, then you use it frequently, right? So you have to use frequently, and people don't like overtime. Every now and then it's not a problem, but not frequently.
Flexibility, because if there's a high demand, you can, say overtime for just 1 week and then.
True. Yeah, but why is the last one? So
Nobody likes
say,
Yeah, it's like a cushion, like safety cushion.
But
yeah, but everything is safety cushion, right?
Yeah, but it's easier.
these people is already working over
Yeah.
time, right? They're already
Yeah.
working for 6 hours.
You overtime first and run out of first and you.
Yeah.
Either educate the temp workers or callable workforce.
Yeah, it gets harder, right? Yeah. True.
The
Well, yeah.
quality goes down because people have to work longer.
Okay, the manager explained to me there are 2 reasons for this. First one, if I use it as an earlier layer, I use it more frequently and I get complaints from my people, I get quality problems, I cannot train those people because everybody's fed up. Right, so that's the first. And the second one was more psychological. I'm using that as a last resort because it also goes like this. So everybody sees all of a sudden there are these roller containers moving to the social workplace. Hey, things are busy. Then the callable workers come in. Hey, are you back again? Yes, I heard it's busy here. Oh, we can really need your help here. Then the temporary workers come in. Hey, nice to meet you. Why are you here? Well, I come here to help you because it's busy. Yeah, great that you are here. So it's very busy, and a lot of people working there, and you see all the movements, and then the manager comes in and say, people, I really need you. Only for a couple of weeks, but it's very busy. You can see it is busy. Yes, everybody can actually see it's busy, not just the manager saying something. Everybody can see it's busy. Can I rely on you for the coming 2 weeks? And then who would say, yes, of course, fine. Here to help you. So it is more the psychological. Okay, anyway, so this is how that was implemented there. When I saw this first, I thought, what a nightmare. What the hell? Why not a level strategy? It's the same every day, and you don't have to have all these layers and getting all these people in and train them. But this is what the chase strategy is. And this is, I think, a very nice explanation. If you choose for a fashion product where you want to adopt with flexibility and speed, then yeah, this is the consequence. And it might not be nice for operations, but that is the consequence on how to do this. Okay, another real life story. This comes from a large retailer in the Netherlands. And they have sales in their shops, but they also have business-to-business sales. And the demand pattern of the business-to-business sales went like this. So we have some lower demand, and then it peaks, and then it drops back, a lower demand and peaks, and etc. etc. So this reoccurred every period, so to speak. This is known as the hockey stick phenomenon. Ice hockey stick shape, but it's also known as a student syndrome. This is where students actually spend their time studying, drinking beer, doing nothing, and then all of a sudden the exam is coming up, and then we work all night, and then we do the exam, and then everything starts again. Right? But this was the demand pattern for their products. Any idea why this might happen? What is the underlying reason?
We're following the sunlight, the daily sunlight in the Netherlands.
The daily sunlight.
One day every 2 weeks.
I did not do any difference on that. Nothing to do with the sun. At least not in this case. Could be towards the end of. Yeah, the release. Yeah. Okay, that had nothing to do with software, but might be that there are also.
Flash sales, marketing campaigns.
Marketing campaigns, yeah. We have all kinds of promotions, right? That could be. But this had nothing to do with the promotions. Could be, you see that frequently with promotions, the same phenomenon, but not in this case.
Well, some products are only sold in specific time.
Yeah, might be seasonal products. Yeah. Again, you see the same phenomenon, but it was not the case here. Actually, this happened every 3 months, exactly every 3 months. It had to do with the bonus system of the sales force. The sales were a little bit like students. They did not take their job too seriously, but they had some bonus system which they had to have a certain amount of sales. So they did not too much at the start of the period, but when the deadline was coming, they all of a sudden started selling like crazy. And yeah, then of course the demand there goes up. And then they made their bonus again, and then they thought, let's do it easy again. So that's the way it was. So it was every due to bonus. Okay, if this is the demand pattern and we throw this to operations, what do we feel?
Pain?
Pain. So how do we consider this? Of course, this is craziness, right? This is what we call bad variability. We call good variability and bad variability. Good variability if his customers are willing to pay for this, and it messes up our production system. But anyway, that's what the customer wants. But this is not what the customer wants. This is what the sales force, our internal system, has created. We are shooting ourselves in the foot. This is what operation people would say. They would say, why do we need a bonus? Oh, why do we need a bonus? Any idea? Yeah, people to do their work. In operations, say, you get a bonus for doing your work. We always do our work. We never get a bonus. In operations, the whole bonus system not very well known. And I don't want to do this whole bonus debate here, but there's little understanding from operations perspective, because what we like is this nice level strategy. This has nothing to do with level strategy and what is the underlying reason. So from an operations perspective, this is really bad. And so this created a lot of fights, internal fights in this organization. And actually, the retail organization doesn't exist anymore. Not sure whether it has anything to do with this, but this is one of the problems. So if we look at demand management again from an operations perspective, so we are an operation and we look at demand management, our request to our demand people is, our sales people is, why don't we do this? Why don't you stimulate demand a little bit in the slow periods and slow demand a little bit in the peak periods? Because then we get nicely to our level strategy. Ideally, we get to the level strategy, but the more you can smooth the demand, the better we are off. So this is the operations perspective on sales, right? What is the typical reaction of salespeople on this? There goes my bonus. Let's get rid of this bonus.
You are here for us.
Yeah, so we get into this political fighting, right? So hey, you are supposed to do whatever we say. But basically, what they say to me, at least, this is a little bit silly. We understand this one and this one. We have to stimulate demand. That's what we are hired for. But we're not going to slow the demand. Are you crazy? We are here to elevate the entire thing. So don't bother us with slowing the demand. And sometimes they even say we wouldn't even know how to do that. But it's not entirely true. So how could you slow demand? What could you do?
Well, with the bonus, just put the bonus.
More bonus. We give you a bonus if you don't sell a lot in this period. That's right. Could be done. Yeah, off-season sales. But how can we slow demand?
Increase price.
Yeah, make a higher price. And by fluctuating your price a little bit, you can obviously influence demand in both directions. And advertisement, and stop advertising here. But of course, what people frequently do in a peak period, for instance, this summer we have a World Cup of football again. Not in the Netherlands, but in the rest of the world we have this. And so in that period, a lot of beer is sold. And so what you frequently see that in the peak period, we start making a promotion to have even more sales. Operation people really hate this. Do that not at okay, it's difficult thing. Okay, so you could really, from an operation perspective, flatten. And this is where we get into this sales and operation plan. Yes, from a operations perspective, we can adopt our level strategy a little bit. If you guys from sales flatten it also a little bit, then we meet each other somewhere in the middle. That's optimal for both of us. That is the underlying idea. Actually, this demand management you find frequently at airlines and hotels. They do this a lot. There was a period when I sat in the plane and I knew what I paid for the ticket. I asked my neighbors, what did you pay? What did you pay? And the funny thing was, they always had a different price. The not so funny thing was that I was always the one with the high price. So something went wrong here. But this demonstrates that they are fluctuating their prices. What they call yield management or revenue management. Why is that so important for airlines and for hotels? Why would they do that? Why are they so much into this whole?
They can't fluctuate with supply.
Yeah, they can't fluctuate their capacity. Their capacity is kind of fixed. If you have a hotel, there is a number of rooms there. You cannot say, oh, a lot of guests tonight, let's have 10 more rooms. That doesn't work. Or demand is a bit slow, let's remove the rooms. It's not possible. Same, obviously, for airplanes. You can hardly say, let's place another 20 seats in the airplane. Let's have an additional airplane. It's very robust in that way. That's why demand management is so important there. Also interesting is this strategy of everyday low pricing. Walmart, one of the famous supply chain organizations in the world, has come up with a strategy of what they call everyday low pricing. That's basically what they are saying. We are not doing any promotions, or at least we cut our promotions as a supermarket. Most supermarkets constantly have promotions, always something on promotion. But they say we don't do that. Let's have stable prices, and then of course low prices throughout the years, the same price. Why would they do that? Yeah, they would stable demand. Hence, from an operations perspective, they can have this very efficient supply chain. Walmart became world famous with the idea of making a very stable supply chain. And all fluctuations should be cut down. That keeps stability. Because all fluctuation from an operation and supply chain perspective is a killer. We don't want that. Let's have everyday low prices. Of course, you rule out your total sales department here. There's no promotions. People are saying, yeah, what are we then still doing here? Well, maybe nothing. Maybe you should save money that way. So this is really a strategy. You see in the supermarket world now, these two things a bit competing. On the one hand, we have the everyday low prices, and the other one, we have the steep promotions like MediaMarkt. No, I'm not crazy, yeah, I am. There's always these things going. Okay, good time for a break. 20 minutes or so. And then we start again with inventory.
Yeah.
So I went the easy way. Sorry, it's a little bit
It's so funny that like guidance, people are doing something that should be done by machine learning. For me, this doesn't make sense. Okay, I understand the pressure to deliver stuff.
Yes.
So then you have to do the preview. How did you do it? Like, so what are you going to submit?
I just have the parts. I don't know.
What's making
Like I'm confused in terms of how to
But
show
what
it.
it really needs is,
I don't know. I was
That's
thinking
just,
because
but what Hashim did is he used a company's product. But what I'm trying to do is taking Apache and the base code and then play around with it.
I don't have a
maybe
connection.
sometimes it's important to connect.
Step one. Looks good in the front.
Yeah, it's warmer
It's
though.
all like
Yeah.
Like small gazelle. I can also show ID. Virtual box.
Yeah, but I really wanted to do something more. Like,
This didn't
that
work
we
for
can
you?
learn. I couldn't try because everything in this computer is blocked, so I need to
Is
look
your
in my
work
other
computer?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I don't have
Yeah, I have
admin
knowledge
rights,
rights, so
yeah,
yeah,
so
I'm
I
kind of
cannot,
admin of the machine at least. This is very tricky stuff, by the way. This is Linux.
no.
So this is exactly the same thing.
Really sure about stuff.
We put it basically
No idea. Yeah,
So this this is
Oh,
just
yours
this is
looks
a
really
file.
nice.
So I just put the text, put it down.
And you
That's
did
it.
yourself?
I downloaded this
I
one.
just
today.
came up with
This is the latest one.
Yeah, but it's still like
and then I select 5
What
things.
we need to
So
really do is,
simulate like 5 machines.
these are the
something
different
like
kinds
that.
of
And then we merge it here. Everything.
Yeah.
It's coming from each
Yeah, problem is I'm struggling to make it
here.
look like that. Because you in this
I
thing
just
you
configured
almost
it.
end up with the
With
end
this
thing. Yeah.
directly,
So
yeah.
how do I
configured.
I
Once
think
that's
that I
configured,
thought so that
you have
one
to
is he's
no,
just
you
showing
showed
No.
oh,
this
But
will
he's
be
just
show
showed
the
the
map
first, the
and
first
the
one.
reduce.
Ah, okay.
whatever you give it to it.
Yeah.
This one machine.
But this is
So
really
this
nice.
is
So I just did this. I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to submit. Probably I will send it in the Excel file. And that's it. So I can send it to you.
Okay.
And
The whole idea is we can run the code.
Like I did the exam. I go on the
and this one is the other one.
How did you do that one? Use a code or something?
The
Or
one thing which I was
against
able to
like
do is,
logic?
Logic.
I was doing
Pure logic. So this is the one. I just draw this. So just following starting 0, the rest is
you have to
in
get
Or is it going in order or something?
yeah, so,
Oh, okay.
so starting 0, then you start saying, okay, it is 1, this is 1. I
Oh,
just found this on
that's
internet.
really cool.
And then you start saying, okay, from
Oh.
B, now B is 1, and then
So how long
2.
does it take to go
if you're
to?
using MapReduce,
So, yeah, so to go to,
using
so
JVM.
to from B, you go to F
Oh,
and
okay,
to
so
B,
each level you're using the max of the previous and then how many steps?
then
What
you
it
have
The
the
meat.
yeah, this is the minimum, the
Very
short,
simple.
very, the
Oh, the
short
minimum.
one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
So then you say,
I was
okay, F,
nodding along, but I was
whatever
like,
you already
yeah,
have in B,
I'm
plus
not quite sure
I
if I
assume
can sort
all
of
of
do
these are
that
one.
like today,
Yeah.
learning like 5
And that's
systems.
it.
No, it's really easy. And that's
the
why
same for
I was,
C, so
I
for
was
C
planning
is
to do
here.
it beyond screenshot very simple.
okay, so that's what it is. But how are you okay?
And then this,
EMI does
so
exactly.
you
This is
just keep
a
it right.
PowerPoint.
Just,
There's nothing to
just play with
scare
it,
about.
just play with it, notes.
It's like coloring book.
Sorry?
Sign up for tomorrow?
Yeah.
So for example, if you see you create a cluster.
This
So
is just,
remember,
just put,
AWS
this
was
is
very
just
clever in
figures. I
Like
mean,
you guys said, go to Google, search it, and this is what you get pretty much.
yeah, this is give us someone like example like that.
In the next break,
So
can
there
you
are
explain me
20
the assignment because I don't know what it is.
I don't know what is
You
the
have to do a
assignment
word
about,
count.
but
You
I
have
haven't
to
read
you have to
anything.
do a word count.
But I was
Either
able to
using a
create
Java script
or man.
or
Word count from where?
So let's say you have a
word
text,
count.
Just
You have
take your own
text.
example.
you just
Yeah.
take a paragraph from internet and count how many
Why
words.
I have to do it? I can put it in Word document. It already shows. the
Yeah,
number.
but you need to
But
show the
that's-
process
The
of
idea is
how the
that
computer
you
does.
do parallel processing.
It's not AWS.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's
So you
single
learn
Linux
that.
machine.
Okay,
Mm.
So,
but
Okay.
I'll
So
be
you
honest
can-
with you, I
so
did
you-
it
one is
So you can do it.
technical, but I didn't learn how to. I know what it's doing, but I'm like, okay.
You can use any.
so
if-
not really.
So you can use Python or
this
anything
is
else.
Whatever
my
you
guidance
want.
installation.
If you
You used
But this one I'm saying.
presentation.
no, no, this is the second one.
For the other one, she was like, so.
I use Excel. I use Excel then
You just need to first of all
Must
download
simulate
the.
It just like made nodes, like showed, okay, if I have this input, I have 5 machines that are allocated to each, so let's split it into 5.
and then you start counting and really manual counting.
You
Well,
count
you can do with
in
the
like
formula,
5
but
steps, then the next step you aggregate and count again.
Because it seems like
In each
same
step,
steps
you kind of
using
like
Excel with local instance. Yeah. With some
and it gets faster to count
additional
because
You use Excel?
well,
you can do it manually.
you
The
can
guy
just-
allows that.
So my
If you do the
now,
second.
okay.
So it's like this. If you do it manually,
that they're
for task 1, you have
need
to
to
do
do
the
the
second
second
task,
one.
which is this.
The
If
point
you
is,
do it using a script,
if
task 1, you
you
don't
just
have to
do
do
the
it.
second
you can
one.
use that. But if you
So if you can do the first one, you
Problem
should do the
is,
first
look,
one.
Using Java.
where's your
I don't have to
Excel?
use Java.
But the only thing is, you have to.
So
if
you
I
have
use
to,
Python,
install that, so that's a must. And then you need to configure the
Python
Java
alone is
path
not going to work because
the
you're meant to connect to a cluster. So
So
you
look,
have to create a cluster.
literally
I just put here the text, and then in the second one I say, okay, this is my
this
map,
one, I
my
just
mapper,
Machine 1.
machine 1, machine 2, machine 3, and just mapping.
Do you understand the concept of why this is faster? Think about it. So if you have like 100 words and there's like 20 of the same words, each machine counts a portion of it.
So this is one part.
And then if you have a lot,
There are
then you
already
need to like go through the whole thing to decide how many times did this thing appear. What happens is it does it in 5 goes, for example, and in each part it counts how many times that word was there. And then the next time to add it together, it's less of a process in Madness. You don't have to go through the whole thing, it just goes through the
The thing
summary.
is,
You're creating like
I haven't know
intermediate summaries, and
zero
it gets
knowledge.
faster to go to the results. Is the logic behind it.
so if you do the Java one, then you don't have to.
No,
bits of it. Yeah.
The thing is, the Java one looks really ugly. Like, so I had like
Do we need to explain on this one? Because
my results from like
I think it's
demo is this. Like, look at her nice Excel thing, and that's mine.
yeah, but and then it's the same. You see, you have a text and you have the word with a number.
It's not easy though if you're not used to do this stuff. Like,
There are no numbers. I think.
Which is nothing but
But just check. Just put the words of the text.
I'm gonna get a drink.
And
and
then
I'll also
Yeah,
show
we
you.
can also check there on the table.
it's exactly what the teacher
I'm
has
not
in the
touching
slides.
it.
It's exact- I did exactly the same. I just
It is instructions
it's not
written down.
instructions, but slides
For
that
example,
says
you
an
take
example.
example.
It's in the slides or in the notes. I did
Slide
it
deck is that? I
uh,
haven't even opened
in
it.
the second one. In the second one or in the notes of the second one. You will see exactly the same. The
How
same
long it will take this one?
thing. I mean, you just put it together because you need to have at least 100 words, and then you start, saying, okay, how many machines are you going to have? Which is, I just say I have 5 machines here. So they told me that first you need to kind of initialize the word, I don't know, something like that, so a step in between. But from the slides, I just get this one, so you just put it, and you say how many, for instance, and I have, in this I have 1 here and 1 here, so I have 2. So this is just formula from set count, that's it. And the same for every section, but after that you just it's a sort and copy. It's in the slide. It's a- Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. So you sort and copy, and then after that, this is just an example of where is coming this from. Where. So this one is coming from here. The second one is coming from the one down. And in the end, it's just count, purely count. But if you know how to make it in Java, it's nicer.
I don't know Java. I mean, I learned
I
one time
learned
in
to learn
college.
Java.
Cisco pickup. I didn't. I asked for extension for the data visualization.
You could
I had a lot of deliverables from work.
Did you finish the
Yeah.
LAP?
Yeah. 7 pages you have to sit and write.
Did you manage the 3000? I did.
Yeah.
Couldn't. I went 24. I couldn't do more.
Good right for Kara.
Yeah, but I cannot.
You could say that I'm trying to learn that.
No,
What is history? What the Ambari?
If you ignore Ambari, whatever you want to show you, ignore Ambari. So you can do both. You can do whatever is quicker. If you already know how to do it, you should go with what you do. But the idea is, what I was thinking is that here's a shop again. Right? Configure that as many different. Then I'll just show the screenshot. The idea is you can do exactly the same on your system. Yeah. Yeah.
But you made so there is a part of this assignment to just try to use this algorithm to count the codes and some text.
The idea is you're using second one, you don't need to do that. The only tricky part is
It's a very
technical.
Yeah, very exciting. It's really well good. It's better shown to us on the last class.
Actually, that's what, yeah, I already knew. And actually, it's still not really finished yet, so I thought now we did resource for air, so it's a whole process. Yeah, I'm almost there. Yeah. Yeah. How's it going?
Meneer, ik had een vraag.
Ja.
Ik was vorige week niet en toen was ik even aan het terugkijken. En toen keek ik op de slide Blackboard. En toen dacht ik ga even zoeken naar die auto. Ferrari of Toyota ding.
Ja.
Maar ik zag die ook niet in de slides staan.
Nee, dat zit nog in slidepack 1.
Oh, oké, dat is het.
Ja, ik
dacht
had nog een
dat-
klein stukje uit
Dus dat,
het eerste slidedeck gedaan. Ja.
Nee, ja, dan wordt het iets duidelijker, want we hadden het wel genomen, maar je zag ze niet in de slides.
Nee,
Dus dat,
maar er zit nog eigenlijk een stukje wat nog in.
Oké, dan, ja.
This is time we have more time.
Oh, right, okay, so, but don't you need parts of it? You don't at all.
If you're doing the one for Wednesday, you don't need those.
So it's really just an
One for Wednesday.
algorithm on text. You just get that piece of snippet of Java. You don't have to set up anything in the cloud or anything like that.
Well, you can, but I just did it in Python because the whole idea is I think that you show that you understand how the MapReduce is done.
You just parse it basically with some sort of you parse the text and you break it down into.
Yeah, but then you need to MapReduce it, so you need to map it and then reduce by key.
That's what I mean by parsing. So you just have to like break it down by word type and then you count it, but then.
No, you just, but you, like the MapReduce is a specific thing. So you first need to map it and you say all the words and you put a one behind it, and then you reduce it by key. That means you need to use whatever provider or something like that. So those are the two. I think those are the two steps that you need to kind of like.
But then, like in terms of parallel processing, do you just code like that?
Yeah. So you need to use.
But are you using multi-threading or is it just you just do serially, like like right? Because secondly, it's considered parallel.
Yeah. So you need to use your method.
I don't know, okay.
So,
If you think
so
so.
if you have like,
Well,
if you have the.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
If it works, I don't think.
But then it's black. Actually, sure. Depending on how you put it. Right? So that's why.
If it works. You understand? That's how it does. I mean, that's the exercise. It's not like, that's the part. You don't need to, like, build
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, but how I do like science chart.
But if you made it sooner, it should be.
How much fulfillment we did, because the cancellation.
I don't even know what it is.
And because of the year budget, kind of.
Another factor which I figured it out that it's because the incentive is also linked to that if this is the order book, the cancellation minimum it should be. So there are a lot of people in the system who are playing with
I also Tata Steel is then they start producing the new inventory. It's just for this small period that they start producing.
There are some sectors, for example, where the reps make a lot of money in terms of selling. Because pharma company markets, Pfizer, and those are the last very strong fund. And it's where they do a lot of things.
Yeah, sure. It's all short term, it's all local. Yeah, it's how it works.
Basically making a better because and then is the company really doing good? But number all agree on
Watermelon metrics.
Interesting.
Oh, so you're good. You're good. There's a library.
No, well, so what I did.
Je hebt zo'n grote scherm op de computer, dat is toch wel
Ja, omdat ik nog niet meer weet hoe dit ding.
Dat ding is.
Het is een heel fancy ding, maar het is best wel een ingewikkeld ding.
Het is wel goed uit.
Ik wil zeggen, het is ook veel te doen.
Ik doe een PKPM, hè?
Nou, ik heb het zelf dat ik voor
Ja, dat heb je vergeten.
Ja,
dan kan ik wel zeggen.
dat is gewoon een keer.
Dus ik nog 10.
Ik zijn afspraken. Dus
Ja, we staan
soms
met
kunnen we dat aan
ja, maar ik kan niet.
Ja, maar kan ik doe dat op part-time opleiding, want ik s'avonds iets kan doen. Ja, soms heb je de hele dag dan is het ook nog.
Maar mensen hebben een goed idee.
Oké, dus om 10 houden we nog 10. Het is toch wel in, je bent ook toch wel
Wat een beetje jouw image blijkbaar.
Wat heb jij dan?
Oh, 6 uur lang afspraak.
Kan 3 uur wel.
Waarom in de half uur?
Ik heb al een televisiepunt.
Nee, je was niet echt. Ik was al zoiets van.
Dat is wel iets aan ik weet het niet zelf.
Nee, ik ook niet voor een half.
Kijk, ik sta maar zo op de dak als je dat niet hebt. Ja, dit is wel. Oh, that's good. Yeah. No, this is good. Now it's just anything. So we're sitting there watching him paint his slides. I don't know.
Why does he have the intercultural function on? Because
Yeah,
he takes it words.
Nee, helemaal niet. Ja.
Trying to make it work.
Ja, want zo is het jou daar.
Ik zie niet.
Ja. Op dinsdag omdat maandag wel omdat maandag Paas is bijvoorbeeld. Dat probeer je te helpen, hè?
Nou ja, ze kon er niet over. Ik heb alle pakken op de hele jaar. 15 minuten.
Ja.
Ik ben vanavond ook een beetje thuis.
Ja, wij ook. Je moet een beetje opletten.
Ja, wij staan er ook. Ging er vanuit dat niet hebben. Ja,
wel.
Ik dacht, jij moet eten halen.
Ja, ik had alleen
Es un chocolatito, no.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is inventory management. It's inevitable in the course of operations and supply chain to look at the inventories. Somehow, operations supply chain people are hung up on the red triangles, because we have yellow boxes which add value, and we have the red triangles which do not add value, and we have a love-hate feeling with these things. So on the one hand, we don't like the red triangles because they don't add any value, so we don't like queues, and we don't like inventories, but on the other hand, they're almost always there, either a queue or an inventory. So that is a bit of the strange thing that we are having. So fundamentally, the underlying ideas is we don't like inventories, we don't like queues, but we frequently have them. Why wouldn't we like them? And why don't we like inventories? What's bad with inventories? Cost. Cost, yeah, cost money. Another key reason for not wanting inventories. Depreciation, obsolescence frequently, especially for fashion products. We call Batavus or Zara, they don't want to keep inventories because then they go obsolete and you cannot sell them anymore. You have to sell them at a lower price, or they go waste or whatever. So these are the two key reasons. Some people go as far as inventory is the root of all evil. Boom. That is pretty worse. But still, they are there. In almost all operation supply chains, we do have queues and inventory. Therefore, there must be good reasons for keeping inventory. Can we name some? What would be a reason for having inventory?
Can deliver faster.
Yeah, speed. Fast delivery. Good. Other reasons for keeping inventories? Smoothing your production. Level strategy.
Flexibility.
Yeah, it offers you flexibility, so you can still work on even when all kinds of things go wrong.
Cheaper.
Yeah, it can be a cost trade-off, so to speak. So there are indeed many reasons for keeping inventory, and so the way I like to go about this topic is the following. First, we're going to analyze why the inventory is there, give a reason for having the inventory. I will even make some quantitative models for that, just because we all like it. And then we're going to analyze the underlying reasons. And once we understand the underlying reasons, we're going to see what we can do about it, removing those inventories. So first we look for the cause of the inventories, the underlying reasons, and then we are wondering how can we take away the cause, because if we take away the cause, then we also take away the inventories. That's the idea. So we're going to take a look at a couple of reasons for having inventories, and we're going to analyze them. So motives for not inventories are disappear, cost, obsolescence. So the first reason for having inventories is known as the transaction motive, and the inventories or stocks that we have caused by this motive are called the cycle stocks. And that idea is that once we place an order, let's make the order large enough so that we don't have to pay this ordering costs too many times. Probably at least in my recollection, the most interesting example of that comes from this here. This is a Dutch clipping. That's the only Dutch I have in here. But we Dutch people are so proud of this guy. Who is it? André Kuipers. He is our astronaut. He was in outer space. He was in the International Space Station. He is one of our 2 astronauts, and we are very proud. He was Man of the Year, etc. And this example comes from him being in outer space in the International Space Station. And this article says, in Dutch, our astronaut Kuipers, he gets new supplies. That is, he gets new food. He was there half a year orbiting the Earth, and they launched a new a rocket towards the International Space Station with food. And when I read the article, I thought, how would they do that? Would they send 3 rockets a day, 1 for breakfast, 1 for lunch, and 1 for dinner? Or would they, once they send it, let's pack it with food for the coming months? Obviously the last one. And this is typical the transaction motive. Once we send a rocket, there's a lot of expenses going in there, then obviously we should have enough food for at least a longer period to survive. This is known as the transaction motive. In other words, if I place an order, let's have enough for the coming period. Otherwise, I have to keep placing orders, and that's way too expensive. Or when I have quantity discounts, let's say I place a larger order, then I don't pay so much. Then, of course, I have an inventory, but there's a good trade-off. That is the underlying transaction motive. Now, like I said, I'm going to analyze this a little bit further using quantitative models, but in order to be able to do so, I have to make a little detour here and start talking about inventory systems. So I will come back to this transaction motive in a moment. But first, we are going to talk a little bit about inventory systems. What does it mean? I'm going to look at an inventory and see how I handle that inventory, how I manage that inventory. So an inventory here can be an inventory of raw materials, or an inventory of in-between products, or an inventory of end products, doesn't matter too much. The underlying idea is that I have some inventory, and that the inventory goes down, decreases, gets less due to demand or usage in my production process. So I take items from the inventory. In order to get new inventory, I have to place an order. It can be an internal order to my production environment, or it can be an order to the supplier, send me new stuff. And the question is now, how do we handle these orders? So there's demand there. If I do nothing, then my inventory is depleted, so I need to have a refill. And how do I handle that? That's what we call inventory systems. Now, in real life, there are more than 100 inventory systems, but just to keep it simple for you guys, I have listed only 4 here, and they all rely on how much to order and when to order. Now, for instance, in how much to order, we can have a fixed order size. So whenever I place an order, it's always of the same size. That size is called the capital Q. Or we can have an order up to level. That is, I have a certain amount that I like, and I order the amount that I have compared to what I like. Let's say, let's assume I want 100 in inventory, and I got 20. I want 100, I have 20, so I place an order of 80. And then next time around, I have 60, I want 100, and I order 40. I always fill up to the given level. So these are 2 different systems. Either always order the same amount, or I order up to the same amount. The other issue is when to order, when to place an order, when in time. Again, 2 options here. One is what we call periodic review, that you order always at the same moment. I always order on Monday morning, or always the last Friday of the month. These are fixed moments in time. Then we have this periodic review, or we have continuous review. Continuous review is I monitor my inventory constantly. It drops, it drops, it drops, it drops, until it reaches some threshold level. And when it reaches the threshold level, then I place an order. So that's continuous review. As soon as it drops below a certain level, I place a new order. Now, depending on when you order and how much you order, you get into 4 systems. Again, these are just 4, there are more than 100 other systems. Let's take a well-known example to most of us, that is fuel in our car. We have an amount of fuel, an inventory of fuel in our car, and the fuel in our car is dropping. Why would that be? Might be a leakage, but that's not what I'm referring to here. Now, we are driving, right? So we are driving with the car, so the amount of fuel in your car goes down. That's the demand. And now we are wondering, how do we place an order for new? Well, we go to pumping stations and we pump new gas into our car. What would be a typical system there that we use? Which of these 4 would be typical? We can imagine everything, but
inventory position. Almost empty, then go.
Most people would use, not you, but most people would use an SS system. What does it mean? We constantly monitor our fuel level. That is, we look at our dashboard, and if nothing is happening there, we just keep on driving until some point in time, a little light starts flashing. Say, hey, you're low on fuel. And that is what we call the reorder level. So there is a certain level given, a threshold level, which is the indicator for, hey, we have to place a new order. When that happens to me, I always go to the nearest pumping station because I don't want to be short on fuel. And my wife always says, well, we still have 150 kilometers to go, so let's live dangerously. So we have this flashing light level is a small s. And when we are there, then basically you fill it up to the maximum, whatever fits in there. So a little bit more and it drops more. So that's an SS system, right? S is the constant review, and the capital S is we fill it up to whatever fits in the tank. Okay, so the one that we are going to look at for the further analysis is the SQ system. And what does it mean? Still, we have this continuous review, so we follow the demand. We have this flashing light level, which is the small s, and when we are there, we order a fixed quantity, capital Q. And so that is the type of system we're going to look at. So we start our first model to analyze this transaction motive. It's known as a classical model. Also the mother of all inventory models. Whatever you read about inventory models, it always starts with this one. And that assumes that there is a SQ system, like we just discussed, and there is a constant demand rate. What does it mean? That the demand of each period is the same. The demand of this week is the same to the demand of next week. It's the same to the demand of after that, the same as the demand of last week. It's always the same. Is that very realistic? No, it's not realistic at all, but for modeling purposes, it's very nice. Later on, we'll see what happens if this is not a constant demand rate. But if there is a constant demand rate, then our cumulative demand or grows over the time linearly, and the slope of this line is the demand rate. And since that's a constant, we have a straight line. So it goes all neatly. Here, capital D stands for the yearly demand. So we have a reorder level, small s, we have an order size, is Q, and we have a yearly demand. And when you look at the inventory under these assumptions, then it typically looks like this. So here we have the time, and here we have the amount of inventory. We have some inventory, and that drops. Why is that? That's demand. So this is minus D is a slope here until we reach this threshold level, the flashing light on our dashboard, so to speak, and then we place a new order, and then we have some lead time later in which the new order comes in. Just at the moment when we were empty, the new order arrives of size Q, and then we have new inventory, etc., etc. So this is the ideal situation, and it grows like this. Now, under these assumptions, we are wondering what should be our level of S and what should be our level of Q. So what's the best S and what's the best Q? Yeah, the best in order to do what, you would say? Well, in order to minimize our cost. So we are going to minimize our overall inventory cost here in order to keep our inventories in control. So we're going to build a model of total cost under these assumptions. And here again, I make an assumption. The assumption is that there are only two types of relevant cost or variable cost. And the first type of cost that we are looking at is the holding cost. So keeping inventory, there's a cost associated with that, and the more inventory we have, the higher the cost will be. And we have ordering cost. We have to shoot a rocket to the International Space Station. There's a cost involved in that, and we want to keep that minimal. So there are two types of cost, the holding cost and the ordering cost. And when we zoom in the holding cost, then basically we assume that we know that there's a cost per unit per year. What does it cost to keep a unit on inventory in a year? What type of cost would be typically involved in that? Realistically? Yeah, rental, yeah, we have to, depreciation of money, typically a percentage of that. What more cost is involved in that? Insurance, definitely. Yeah, all kind of warehousing cost, light in, and you have to keep it cool or warm, depending a little bit on the thing. So these are all inventory costs, but frequently it's a percentage of your purchase. And furthermore, we have an ordering cost, and we assume here that there is a fixed cost for placing an order, no matter on whether you shoot the rocket to Amsterdam Kuipers with only a breakfast or with for 3 months, we have to shoot it anyway. So the cost of shooting the rocket is the same. So we have an order cost here. What would be typically involved in ordering costs? Yeah, shipping cost, the rocket that we have to launch, and another factor. Typically in real life, administration cost. We have to place an order, and we have to send an invoice, and we have to keep track of all these things. So these are typical administration costs. Okay, so we assume here that these two are known to us. Who could you ask in the organization for these numbers? Purchasing.
Accounting?
Accounting,
Yeah, the
administration.
accounting department, the financial accounting, or cost accounting. They hopefully know these numbers. So when you go to these people, say, hey, what are our ordering costs and what are our holding costs? So we assume that these are known. Now we start to do the modeling a little bit. So we have holding cost, which is nothing else than the cost per unit multiplied with the average inventory. Because the inventory is constantly fluctuating, so let's take the average inventory. And since we have these nice assumptions here, you can immediately see that the average inventory is a half of the maximum because of the nice ranges here. So we have the half of Q multiplied with CH, which is our holding cost. And we have ordering cost is the cost per order multiplied with the number of orders that we are placing. Now, the number of orders that we are placing depends, of course, on our order size. The higher the order size is, the less frequent we have to place an order. So if you come to think of it, it's T over Q. So here we become over the order that you order for the entire year, then you only have to place the order once. Order for half a year, you have to place it twice, etc. So we get to the total variable cost as the holding cost plus the ordering cost. What is not listed here? The purchasing costs. The purchasing costs are not in here. Why not?
They're constant.
Yeah, it's assumed that they are constant. We have to pay for it anyway. So if there are quantity discounts, for instance, then you have to add those because then it does matter. But here we are supposed to be non-variable and fixed. Okay, so we want to determine the order size in such a way that the total costs are minimal. Just to get a little bit of feeling for this. So here I have my decision variable, my order size, my Q. This is the one I have to choose. Here is the total cost. What we see here is that the holding cost is increasing if our order size goes up. Blue line is the holding cost is higher when I place larger orders. Does that make sense? Yeah. I go back a year. If the Q is higher, then obviously I have more inventory. If I have more inventory, I have more holding costs. So that makes perfect sense. And the green line here is the ordering cost. And the higher my order size is, the lower the ordering costs are. Does that make sense? Of course it makes sense. Why is that? Well, if I only place an order once, I have to pay it once. If I place 100 orders, then I have to pay a lot of ordering costs. So the higher the Q is, the lower the ordering costs are. Now, the total variable cost, this guy here, is nothing else than the addition of these two. You see here that it has a minimum right here, which is the intersection of the other two. And that's the one I'm looking for. So my optimal order size is here, the one where the cost is the lowest. And so that is this thing right here. So what we call the economic order quantity, that order quantity that's minimizing this function is this square root formula. Okay. The agreement between business schools is that nobody is allowed to leave the business school with an MBA degree if they have not heard about the EOQ. So you can tick that box. You have heard about the EOQ. You know this one now. So you're okay. What does it mean, the EOQ? It's nothing else than that Q that minimizes this function. You can take the derivative, put that equal to 0, and do some mathematical calculations. But I will just skip that portion. Well, and its use is very simple. We assume that we know the yearly demand. We assume that we have the cost per order, and we assume that we have the holding cost per unit per year. So it's just plugging in the formula, and you get Okay, very nice. That is the Q. The other thing that we needed was the S, because after all, this is an SQ system. It continues a review, so we also want to know what is our reorder level, at which level should we place in order. Well, there's a nice mathematical derivation here, but basically it boils down to S is D into L, which is nothing else than the demand during the lead time, the lead time demand. Okay, never mind the formulas, just common sense thinking. Let's assume that our weekly demand is 40, and that our lead time is 3 weeks. When should we place an order? At which level? 3 weeks and 40 per week. When should we place an order? At which reorder level? Flashing light level?
120.
120? Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah, because then we have 120 for 3 weeks to cover, and then just when we run out, the new shipment comes in. So it's 3 into 40 in the okay. D into L. So it is very mathematically, but that's pretty straightforward. So just because I need them later, I will say EOQ square root 2D COOCH, and S is D into L, which is the D time. Okay, all very nice mathematically, but some people now say, yeah, Jacques, that's all very nice, and but what's the point here? What are we doing? We started with saying we don't like inventories. Inventory is the root of all evil. And you have now optimally determined something that we don't want. This is nonsense with mathematics. That might be considered as double. It's nonsense. It's the same. So these people say, you know what, I want to reduce my inventories. Inventories are the root of all evil. I want less inventories. Yeah, you have determined your EOQ, but I'm going to order less than EOQ, because if when I order less than EOQ, then I have a lower inventory, and that's exactly what I want. So never mind all this optimization. I just want a lower inventory. But that is very stupid. What happens if I order less than EOQ?
You run out.
No, you don't run out. That's not the problem.
Cost goes up.
Yeah, your costs go up. You can see it here. This is optimal, lowest cost. If you order less than EOQ, yeah, you have higher cost. Yeah, you have less inventory. Yeah, congratulations, but your order costs go way up. I'm not sure what your incentive is, but my incentive list cost should be low, not high. Okay, so yeah, so maybe there is a point there, but still I want less inventory. Okay, so now the question becomes, if we want less inventory and do accept EOQ, which we should, you accept EOQ, okay, but still we want less inventory. What to do?
Sell less.
Sell less. You know what? Let's cut demand totally. Demand zero. No demand. No EOQ. No inventory. We have solved that problem. No, that's not the way.
Or order more often.
Order more often. But if you order more often, that's immediately associated to your order size, is it not? The order size comes down.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we have to think a little bit on. You're in the right direction, so we can change these parameters, right? If you lower your D, then your EOQ goes down. So we have three options. Oh, let's not touch D, that's okay. Lower ordering cost or higher inventory cost. Which of these two make sense? Lower your ordering cost. Because if you come to think of it, what was the whole reason for having these inventories? It was the transaction motive, right? Because we have the ordering cost. We have to shoot the rocket to Kuipers, otherwise he's starving there, and that is not the whole idea. So we have to shoot it anyway. But can we not keep the ordering cost as low as possible? So our line of thinking is, one, we accept this to be the optimal, the two optimal might not be good enough. We can still improve. Okay, that is hard to digest for most of the people that are in mathematics. Optimal is optimal. You cannot do better. No, first optimal, then improve. Then we can still think of which changes can we make in the parameter in order to make this work. So ideally, we're going to say that we have to lower our ordering cost. Okay, nice. What would be real life ways to do this? How can we lower our ordering costs in real life?
Pass the shipping cost to the user.
Yeah, reduce our shipping costs. So make sure that our shipping costs go down. How could we do that? Okay, we can of course push our suppliers. So hey, we want to pay you less, which is happening for them. We are going to tender, stuff like that. So that's helping. We could also do more sustainable things, so to speak.
Set up distribution centers.
Yeah, have our suppliers nearby.
Yeah.
This is maybe you have heard of Toyota City. What's the idea? The Toyota assembly plant is there, and all the suppliers are on the premises of Toyota, which allow Toyota to have all kinds of just-in-time deliveries. They keep very low inventories. That's because all these people are very nearby, making their ordering cost way lower. So having your suppliers nearby really helps you. Another thing that we can do, and that is actually happening in real life frequently. Yeah. Okay, so we have to do what was in here? Ordering cost, shipping cost, then administration costs. Can we also lower the administration cost? Easily with all the new techniques and all new technologies, and we have EDI, electronic data interchange, and we shoot the orders immediately into the ERP system of somebody else without anybody interfering. That is all automated factoring, and all these things are really there to smooth the whole ordering process. And if you have lower ordering cost in that way, it also lowers your inventories. That's the great thing about all the new technologies, all the new electronic data interchange and what we have, is that we smooth our ordering process and thereby lower our inventories at the same time. Double positive effect. So in real life, we will always go after the ordering cost. If you're more in a manufacturing setting, then you would like to lower your setup cost or your changeover cost from one product to another. You want to become very flexible in moving from one product to another.
But it's still very counterintuitive that you increase your holding cost. What shows up in the formula like that?
Yeah, well, it is true. You can artificially say, I'm going to make my holding cost higher, and thereby lower your.
Like if I have derived this equation, then I would just look at that and say, that doesn't make sense. Increase your holding cost.
Well, okay. Let's say if your holding costs are extremely high, then obviously you want to have lower inventories because the cost is way too high. That this connection is there is pretty straightforward. But it is not a managerial thing. You cannot say, I'm going to increase my holding costs, because it would be artificial. That's why we're always looking only at the ordering costs. And really, when you come to think of it, let's assume that the order costs are zero, that they are not there. Extreme case. You don't order anything. The whole reason for having the EOQ is because of the non-zero ordering cost. And that is the transaction motive. That's where I started. Sorry? Yeah, good question. Some people are saying, well, if I lower my lead time, what would be the impact on my EOQ? Let's assume I lower the lead time. Instead of 3 weeks, it's only 1 week. Would that have an impact on our inventories? No, nothing. No, your reorder level would be lower, but your inventory doesn't depend on your reorder level. It only depends on your order size. So it would not have any impact on your inventories. That's counterintuitive, but in a moment we will see another example where it does matter. but not for this motive. This motive, it doesn't have any impact. Okay, let's move on to there's an example to the review question, old exam question, just to rehearse it a little bit. What do we have here? A company called Parts R Us. They have great sales, booming sales. Sales has increased by a factor of 25. So they sell 25 as much as they used to do 5 years ago. And when they looked at their inventories, they see that their cycle inventory has increased with a factor of 10. So they have 10 times more inventory now than they used to have. And the president goes to his operation manager and says, fantastic job. Increase in sales 25 and only 10 times as much inventory. You're a great guy. And the question here is, do you agree? Whenever you find a question like that on the exam, you should not agree. That is obvious. But of course, it's all about the reason. Why don't we agree? Why is this not? Are we not happy with the operation plan?
The square for the square root in the formula.
Sorry?
The square root in the formula.
Yeah. So?
So if you increase it by, so if it goes up by 25, then you'd assume it should go up by only 5.
Very good. Yeah. So we have to look at the EOQ formula because inventory is determined. So we are from cycle stock here by the EOQ. So the amount of inventory is determined. So apparently the EOQ has gone up with a factor of 10. That's the only reason why we have 10 times as much inventory. Should we have more inventory at all if our demand goes up? Yeah. If our demand goes up, we have higher EOQ, therefore higher inventory. We just saw the other way around. We were suggesting let's skip demand totally, yeah, then we don't keep inventory. So, but yeah, if demand goes up, we have more, but not with a factor of 25. If demand is 25 times as high, then your EOQ should be only 5 times as high. Hence, your inventory is 5 times as high. But these guys are having inventories 10 times as high. No, that's not a good idea. Apparently, we have lost our way here a little bit. So we are not happy with the operations manager at all. Sure, your inventory should be higher than 5 years ago, but only with a factor of 5, not with a factor of 10. Okay, get the idea? Okay, let's move on to a second reason for keeping inventory. So that's a different reason. The previous one was a transaction motive because we have this ordering cost. But now we look at the precautionary motive, and the resulting inventories are called safety stock. And that is, there are all kinds of uncertainties. The supplier might not deliver in time. Let's keep some extra inventory because if he doesn't deliver, we can still work on it. Or the demand is very uncertain. Let's keep enough inventory. If the demand is higher, then at least we can deliver. We have some reliability there, dependability. And that's what we are going to look at. So we have all kinds of uncertainties now, and these inventories are hedging against those uncertainties. And again, we are going to model that a little bit. So we still have our SQ system, but we now assume that our demand is not fixed per period. There's not a constant demand rate, but our demand rate is fluctuating. It's uncertain. Whenever we have that in my field, we always start saying, okay, that follows some type of distribution. And here I assume that the yearly demand follows a normal distribution with average mu and some variance sigma squared. Okay, so the average is μd, but there is some fluctuation around. And if you then look at our inventory graph, it looked very nice before, but it doesn't look nice anymore, right? Because sometimes demand is very fast, and then it slows again, and then it goes fast, and then it goes up and down, so it's moving strangely. But still, we have our SQ system as before, and we are wondering, under this system, what should be S and what should be Q? And Yeah, well, we might say, I'm not sure. Why is this so difficult? This looks pretty much like the previous one. Why don't we simply use our EOQ and RS that we have determined before? No, it's not possible because D is not a fixed number anymore. It is a random variable. So, yeah, okay, no problem. I'm just going to replace that then with something else. I make this into UD and this also into UD. Simple enough, right? And then this becomes the expected lead time demand. Now this all works pretty well for the EOQ. That's not a problem there because here basically we minimize the expected yearly cost, so that is great. But it doesn't work for our reorder level. And why not? Well, the problem is that there might be stockouts. Oh, wait a minute, stockouts. We didn't have stockouts before. How come we are all having a moment to talk about stockouts? What's the idea of a stockout? Well, during the lead time, during this period, what might happen? Well, demand might be slow, but it might also be very fast all of a sudden. It can happen. That's the random stuff. And if I keep this amount of inventory and the demand all of a sudden is very fast, then I have a shortage. What's wrong with shortage? Why don't we like that?
We can't sell.
Yeah, so they don't sell because that basically eats into dependability. You're not dependable then. And customers like us to always be able to deliver whatever the demand is. So before we were only looking at cost, but dependability also plays a role. And so these stockouts can occur, but we'd like to prevent them from happening. And that is why we need some extra. Okay, so if we would do this. So S is the expected lead time demand. What is the probability of a stockout? Late Tuesday night. It's almost 9 o'clock. We have to think a little. This is actually a very simple question. 50%, right? Because it's a normal distribution, so the probability that's more than average than expected is 50%, and less than expected also 50%. So if we do this, then we have a probability of a stock out of 50%. There's hardly any organization that's accepting this. 50% is okay. The reliability of 90% or 95 or 99.9 or whatever it is, but 50%. So this is not acceptable. This is okay. This is not a problem, but we have to do something with our reorder level. Have to make it a little bit higher, because if we make it a little bit higher, then the probability that we have more is that we have enough is higher. So we are going to play a little bit now with our reorder level. So we're going to determine our reorder level such that the probability of a stock out is a given percentage. For instance, 95%. So then the probability of stock out should be 95%. This is what we call the service level. How would we determine the service level in real life? How would we?
Just
should the service level be 90 or 95 or 97? How would we determine that? 100%.
Depends on the cost.
Yeah, depends on the product.
Depends on. Depends on is okay, but depends on your strategy. Because having a high dependability will create a high cost. What is the trade-off exactly between these two? So it's a matter of strategy, a matter of strategic choosing. Trade-off. So where on the trade-off curve do I want us to be? We have cost here and we have service level here, and there is a trade-off between the two. Of course, I want to be here on the blue line somewhere, and where I want to be, that is determined by your strategy. So here we assume that the strategy says, let's just give it a name, 95%. Okay, once I know that, then I can do my calculation. So here I've blown up this portion of the lead time. So I go to the lead time here, and I blow up that portion a little bit. So I'm here. And so I look at three scenarios. So I have the scenario where demand is exactly according to expectations. Then we have this scenario where the demand is less than expected during the lead time, and where demand is more than expected during the lead time. And for the last scenario, for scenario C, I want to have a little bit extra. This extra is what we call the safety stock. So the mu LTD, that's the demand, expected demand during the lead time. That's this guy here. This is mu LTD, the expected demand during the lead time. That's what I want in any case, plus something extra in order to cope with this fast demand, and that's what we call it safety stock. Right. So I'm wondering how much should this safety stock be, and for that, of course, I can make my calculations here. So this is all this statistics. So I have my expected demand during the lead time, which is mu LTD and some variations there. I want my S, my reorder level, my flashing light level to be here. The expected demand during the lead time plus something extra, so that the probability of the stock out is say 5% or so. Since I'm not too familiar with all these normal distributions, I bring that back to the standard normal distribution of basic statistics. And so we can look at the standard normal distribution for the value of set alpha. Here's the table of the standard normal distribution. I can make that up to set alpha, and then I come to the magic formula. Is that the reorder level should be the expected demand during the lead time, what I already had here, plus something extra, and the something extra is the safety stock. Then set alpha into the standard deviation of the demand during the lead. Okay, for some people this is a little bit how to bluff with statistics. Okay, it goes very fast, probably is right. But let's go back to our intuition, just to see how these formulas match our intuition. Okay, let's assume that we want to be very safe. That is, we want to be very reliable. We always want to be able to deliver. Should our safety stock be high or low? High, right? So then we keep a lot of safety stock, then we are very reliable. Where do we see that in the formula? That we have a lot of safety stock in that case. If we want to be very certain.
And increase your size.
Or if this set alpha is associated with our out of stock. So if we want to be very certain, then our pink area here is very small, hence our set alpha is very high. So a high set alpha is representing the idea that if you want to be certain, then your safety stock is higher. It's this component. Okay, second intuition is, let's assume there's a lot of uncertainty. The demand is very unpredictable. Keep a lot of safety stock or not so much? And a lot, obviously. If there's a lot of uncertainty, we want to have more safety stock. How do we find that in the formula? It's the sigma, right? Yeah. So the higher the sigma is, the more safety stock we keep. Correct? So this is nothing else than the mathematical translation or the statistical translation of these two components. If you want to be very certain, you keep more safety stock. If you have a lot of variability, you don't keep it. You keep also a lot of safety stock. Okay, back to why did we have this inventory, this safety stock? Well, it was because of the uncertainty, right? So let's assume the uncertainty is 0. No uncertainty. And this is 0. This drops. And our reorder level is just back what it was in the classical model. Right, so this is an expansion of the classical model for uncertainty. Okay, if we get all that, we go back to our underlying reasoning. Okay, we have determined now something optimally, but let's assume we want to reduce inventory. Inventory is root of all evil, or you want to reduce our inventory. What could we do?
Reduce uncertainty.
Reduce uncertainty. How could we do that in real life? In other words, we go to attack this guy right here. That's the source of our problems. How could we do that?
Make agreements with suppliers.
Yeah, make agreements with suppliers or with customers, depending on who we are dealing with here, to create stability. more stability. And if they say yes, I want to commit, then I want to pay a lower price. Yeah, we have to trade it off because we have to pay inventory in order for your uncertainty. If you create certainty, then maybe we want to charge a lower price. It can be a trade-off. What more can we do? Can we also reduce the lead time? If we reduce the lead time, would that help you? I asked the question, it probably does. Previously it did not, but here it does. Why is that? Why does reducing the lead time help you? Well, it goes back to this picture. If the lead time is shorter, then the fluctuations that we can get are also less. In other words, the demand during the lead time is less uncertain if we have very short delivery periods. That's why frequently in operations supply chain, we like to keep the delivery period as short as possible. Because short periods means that we don't have a lot of uncertainty, hence we can keep our inventory really low. And the whole concept of continuous replenishment that we see, for instance, in supermarkets. Supermarkets are delivered every day nowadays, and sometimes 5 times per day or something like that. Then you can keep your inventories very low because you can always order whatever it is that you need for the next batch. So you keep your inventory low because of that. But it's all safety stocks that we are discussing. So shortening your lead time doesn't have any impact on your cycle stock, but it does have an impact on your safety stocks. So you have to look at these two things separately. Okay. So here's the graph where we look at the inventory. The demand is exactly the expected demand, so we have this nice triangles again. And in the bottom of this, we have some safety stocks, just to hedge against any uncertainty during the lead times. So here you see that we have both the cycle stocks and then the safety stocks simultaneously. When you look at your inventory, you go there, then you cannot see this is safety stock and this is cycle stock. You just see one stock. There are actually two reasons behind it. There are two more motives that I like to get into. No more modeling. That part is over. We can model anything here, but just to get an idea a little bit of what you can do. Two more important reasons. The first one is what we know as the speculative motive. The speculative motive is basically thinking, hey, something is going to happen. Let's keep some inventory in order to hedge against all those things. That's more longer term, where the safety stocks are more for short term, the speculative motive is more for the long term. For instance, we before saw the level strategy, where we basically are using the inventories in order to cope with this fluctuating demand. They are under this list. If we now want to remove this type of inventory, what could we do? Or typical things to look for. Typical real life strategies. Sorry?
Stability.
Stability, yeah. Everyday low pricing is a typical thing that matches here. We keep our inventories low because we have stability. To get rid of the forward buyer kind of things. And when something on promotion, everybody buys it, and then later on we don't have any demand anymore. That is creating fluctuation. So create stability, also in the long term. Expected labor strikes. Come on, let's pay our laborers enough so that they don't go on strike. We created stability. They'll get all kind of things. Do the chase strategy. Those inventories. So these are all things that we can do in order to overcome this. The final inventory is frequently hidden. Nevertheless, very important. It's a so-called decoupling motive. And the decoupling motive is basically that we have inventory between two activities, if you want to do, in order to ensure that these two activities, these two resources, can work independent of each other. work independent of each other. I always have to think here of my little sister and I doing the dishes at home. When we were little, we had our task from my parents. They say, well, Jacques and Regina, you have to do the dishes always after the meal. It's still a nightmare to me, but we always had to do that. And at that time, my sister and I were not getting along very well. Everything is fine. At that time, we really hated each other. So, but we had to do the dishes jointly, and so I was doing the dishes, and she was doing the drying, and there was this little rack in between where I threw in all the dishes and whatever we had, and she was doing the drying, and we just worked independent of each other, and that was possible because of the inventory. Otherwise, she constantly had to wait for me, or I had to wait for her in order to do the next thing. So it was to keep the peace at home a little bit, the idea. Decoupling inventories, they are called. So to work independently. Let's say a very well-known example is, for instance, the email, your email inbox. Well, somebody is sending an email, it comes in your inbox, and you are doing something different. You're in class now. Some are doing still their emails, but that is not the way it's supposed to be. You're supposed to do something else now, and then the inventory grows. And as soon as you have time again, you take items out of your inbox again. It's just you work independently with it. You can ask a question and answer it in different times, but that's decoupled by your inbox. So that's a decoupling in organizations. What can we do in order to prevent this? So how to get rid of these inventories?
Align the two processes.
Yeah. This is what we call synchronized manufacturing, for instance. Everybody works according to the same pace, according to the same takt time, or whatever you call it. The best known example here is the moving assembly line. The moving assembly line, everybody works according to the same pace. Everything is aligned there, so there's hardly any inventory in between because you just move it on to the next station. So as soon as you say everybody has to work according to the same structure, the same pace, the same takt time, then you get rid of those inventories. Of course, it requires a lot of central planning and controlling. Okay, so we'll see them also later in the course. So these are the different inventories that we are having and how to get rid of them. Okay, in order to understand that a little bit, a review question. We have 4 motives: transaction motive with the cycle stocks, the POQ kind of thing, the precautionary motive with the safety stocks, the speculative motive, and the decoupling motive. And the question is, which of these motives is most important in each of these situations? Okay, first one. Finished products at a manufacturer of ice skates in the Netherlands, I should ask. Because I've been teaching this course in Finland also, and there it was totally different. Finished products of a manufacturer of ice skates in the Netherlands. We have a freezing period coming up. Siberian cold is coming in our direction.
Yeah.
So, which of these motives? Safety stock?
Speculative?
Yeah, that's what we call speculative motive. We speculate that there will be natural ice. For those who have never witnessed them, but the whole country goes berserk. Everybody wants to skate. And since it has been at least a decade since we had natural ice, everybody needs new skates. And yeah, then of course these skates should be on stock because you cannot say, hey, there's a goal there, let's produce new skates. It doesn't work that way. So you have to preempt that. So we always are preparing a lot of skates, just in case. So this is what we call speculative motive. In Finland, it's totally different because they have natural ice there always, and they don't have skating, so it's very predictable, and so that's not so much an issue. Actually, all the skates that we produce here go to Finland because they need them anyway. So. Okay, second one. The deep frozen pre-fried French fries at the McDonald's outlet. Frozen pre-fried French fries. Okay.
Transaction?
Transaction? Why would you say that?
Because they're being sold anyway, so they know that they have it. and they can get it every day. So
So typically, when you bring the fries, the frozen ones to the McDonald's island, you don't bring them one by one. Doesn't make any sense. Once we go there, it's on our route and deliver a couple of boxes so that they have enough, at least for the coming day or the coming few days. That's an transaction market. Of course, they keep a little bit of extra because of safety stock, but their key reason of doing that is transaction mode. Okay, the next one, waiting list of patients for hip surgery. I had long debates on this one with the MBA in healthcare. Finally, we agreed. So, what would that be? Waiting list of patients for hip surgery. Decoupling. Okay, what are we decoupling here? Yeah. No, we are decoupling not the waiting time. The waiting time is the waiting list. We are decoupling two activities. Incoming patients. Then we have to decouple two activities here. So that's my question. Which are we decoupling? This is the waiting list, right?
So we are coupling diagnostics and referral.
Yeah, might be. Yeah.
With the actual operation.
Yeah, actual operations and the diagnosis, that might be. You go to the PATA case, and that is definitely a reason for having this coupling. For all decoupling about this. It's not the main reason. It's absolutely there, but not the main reason. Actually, I've been told that it is the speculative motive. A bit strange here, but it's basically a level scheduling of our operations, and there is a fluctuating demand. That's a bit strange. Why would there be a fluctuating demand for hip surgery? It has to do with, in the winter, nobody goes outdoors, except when there is natural ice. Then it explodes the number of hip surgeries needed. And in the summertime, people go outdoor, do much more. So there's a huge fluctuation, but they have a stable number of operations that they are having. So they hardly fluctuate that. So the amount of surgeries is stable, but the demand for surgeries is fluctuating. Hence, we have this waiting list. It's speculating, yeah. It's due to the level strategy, the type of inventory that we have. The number of doctors, the number of operating rooms, the number of surgeries is basically kept stable. Of course, except for all those really urgent, but those people that can wait. Okay, last one. Spare parts inventories. That's pretty straightforward. Spare parts. Why would we keep them? Safety stocks, right? Just in case something goes wrong, then we need the part to be there. You see that 3D printing is really changing the world in this regard, because then you don't have to keep safety stocks anymore. As soon as you need it, you just 3D print it on the spot. So that helps you. Okay, so we get a little bit of an idea here. Let me just make a few remarks still. So in the start, I said, why don't we want inventories? I said, okay, cost and obsolescence and those things. But more and more, people feel that inventories are the root of all evil, because not of the cost issue or because of the obsolescence issue, but because inventories are a signal of poor management. Inventories are a signal of poor operations management. And of course, everybody wants to be a good operation manager, hence we don't want inventories. And what is the underlying idea there that's frequently associated with this metaphor? You might not have recognized it, but this is a ship, a boat. I did my best. It is in the river. In the river, there's water there, and the boat is us, our operations, and we want to go ahead. And the water is the inventory. And in the river, there are all kinds of rocks. The rocks are our problems that we are having in our operations. And there are rocks like late deliveries. Our suppliers are not always in time. They are frequently late in order to prevent and to keep on moving. We need inventory. And so if we have that inventory, then we are not flooded by the late delivery. Same also for scrap and rework and machine downtime, etc. And so this idea here is that basically inventory is covering up all kinds of problems that we are facing in our operations. And if we are just covering up, then we don't recognize them as being problems. So the more problems we have and the more rocks we have, the more inventory we keep. But actually good operation management is not keeping inventory, but is removing all the problems that we are faced with. So if we have late deliveries, we should address that problem. It really comes a bit from the lean ideas around improvement. We should improve our business. And so if we remove all these rocks, then we can keep lower inventory. And so from this perspective, we consider inventory as a cover-up of our problems, hence a signal of poor management. So there's also a kind of improvement method here. So what would you typically do? Well, let's lower the inventory. Let's see what happens. Just experiment a little bit. And then we hit late deliveries. Oh God, late deliveries. Oh, the supplier. Okay, let's increase our inventory because we have to keep working. But now we have on our management agenda, late deliveries is an issue. And so we have an improvement team who starts making all kinds of analysis and collecting data, big data, and data analysis, and see what are all the costs here, and we visit alternative suppliers and see what can be done. And after a long story, we come up with a solution for the problem, and the rock is pulverized, it's gone away, and we can lower our inventory without any problem. Okay, let's see how far we can go. Hey, we have rework, a lot of rework, and since we have this rework, we have to ship out some other items, hence having inventory. Okay. Higher the inventory again. Rework is now on our management agenda, etc., etc. So that is the improvement idea. So this is also the reason why we say inventory is the root of all problems, because basically it takes away the problems that we are. Okay, another remark is that in many organizations, at least many that I have visited, 2 weeks ago I was with ProRail, you know ProRail? Yeah. ProRail doing, basically making sure that the trains of the NS, the railroads, that they can run. So they have to make sure that all the rails is there and everything. So that's their task. In order to do so, they have a lot of uncertainty, so they keep an enormous amount of inventory. And whenever there's a problem, they say, let's add inventory. Well, that's more inventory, because they want to be very reliable. But of course, the costs go out the roof here, so you have to do something about it. So I said, this is your problem. That's what I said to them. They say, yes, might be a professor, but you're right. And another issue that they have, who is responsible for this inventory? Well, the fundament is everybody is responsible for inventory. You cannot say inventory is the problem of operations, or inventory is the problem of purchasing, or inventory is the problem of sales. Basically, all of these people are responsible for keeping the inventory. Why would purchasing be responsible? Is there take at inventories?
They order.
Yeah, they have to order at the suppliers, and they make the contract with the suppliers. So yes, they're well responsible for that. Of course, you use it in manufacturing, and here. So everybody's responsible for that. So whenever there is a stock out, everybody starts blaming each other because you did something wrong, and then you get the blame. So a problem in many organizations is that there's not one person responsible for an inventory. Yeah, then that there are difficult. So that's any management land, that is probably the first thing that you have to do, make people accountable, at least be clear who does what. Okay, that was inventory management. We move on to the last topic of the day. And that is the difference between push and pull and drum buffer rope. Always a bit hesitant with this because frequently it's more confusing than it sheds any light on it. Nevertheless, in operations, it's a very important topic. Difference between push and pull. Okay, let me start with what we say in everyday life. Routinely, we say that push is proactive and pull is reactive. If something is demand-driven, then we call it pull. And when we say we are doing it according to our planning, then we say it's a push. Or If we have a forecasted demand and we act according to the forecasted demand, then we push products into the pipeline. And when it's based on actual demand, then we call it reactive. Okay, the Massachusetts PATA, is that pull or push? I'm talking about the case that you have. Pull or push?
It's pull. Well, it depends a little bit. Yeah, but
I might say it's demand driven because there's a demand and we have to react to it. Or is it based on forecasted demand? It's a bit fake actually. In a moment, I'm going to give a more detail, and then it becomes very clear. So these are terms that are leisurely used, but don't say too much. So I want to go a little bit more into detail here to explain really what the idea of pool is. So in inventory, the pool is the following idea. We have a fixed inventory level, so 4 items here, 4 boxes. And whenever I take an item out of this inventory, because there's a demand or I'm going to use it in my production, then there's an empty spot, a void, something missing there, and that is then the signal to start ordering a new one or making a new one. If that is the case, we call it pool. So pool here is based indeed on actual demand. If there is demand, we produce something. If there's no demand, we are not producing anything. So that is the underlying idea. If we do that in a kind of process setting, then it works like this. Push and pull. Okay, first one, push is the following idea. As soon as we have capacity available on the first resource, first machine, then we start producing. So we look, is there a job there? Yeah, okay, I will do it. If I have capacity, I will do it. And I throw it in the inventory here. As soon as this capacity is free, I start taking it on. So this is very capacity driven. That's why we call it push system. Whether there's demand for that or not, doesn't matter. If we have capacity, we do it. Pull is the other way around. Whenever I take something from this inventory, that is the trigger for this guy to start working. And since this guy starts working, it takes something from the inventory, and that is the trigger for this guy to start working. So that is more or less pulled through the system because there is a demand here. This one is demand driven, this one is resource driven, capacity. The idea? So that's the difference between pull and push, and if we go even more formal than that, I think this is the best way to define it. Pull, if this is there, a pull system is if there is an a priori maximum to the amount of items there can be in inventory. It can never be higher than a certain amount. There's a built-in maximum. Whereas push is there's no built-in maximum. Bit of strange definition here, but one says there's a maximum work in process. The other one says there's not a maximum work in process. We control that externally. Who would be the external controller here? Who will do that? Right? The customer? No, not the customer. The customer just demands products. It's not controlling our inventory. Sales? Yeah, operations manager. This operate the planner. Plan said, oh, a little bit more, a little bit less. We have too much in inventory now. Let's lessen it a little bit. Oh, we can have more. That's basically external control. Whereas here, it built in. Okay, go back to this one. Push or pull from that definition. Can there be more than 4 here in the system? No, cannot be more than 4. We have a built-in maximum of 4. Only when there's a void, then we take something out, but we cannot say, oh, well, let's put in 5 or 6 or 10 or 20 or whatever it is. Let's see how far we can go. Okay, back to Massachusetts PATA. Pull or push? Now it should be clear.
Yeah.
It doesn't depend. Straightforward. It's a push system. You can push in any amount of, if we say we 60 today, no, let's have 100, why not? Yeah, then the waiting time is a little bit higher, but that is their problem.
But there's only a fixed amount of processing you can do with the resources you have, right? So
yeah, but you can load any amount of in there. There's not a built-in something, yeah. And that's external control. Oh, wait a minute, then we don't have sufficient capacity, so have a little bit less. But we are not controlled for the amount in the entire process. And that's why we have all the waiting times there in the process, because we have not control for that. They don't even have a clue how long it takes. I should not give too much away for the case, but that's actually what's happening there. They have all these inventories of which they are controlling externally. Okay, so if we bring that alive to maybe even your realities, at least my reality. Sometimes people say, ask me, hey, Jacques, how are you doing? I say, oh yeah, great, but very busy. Oh yeah, what are you working on then? I say, yeah, so many things, I can't even remember what I did today. That's typically something that you're working on many, many things. And then I always think, oh gosh, I'm caught up in a push system again. Because I'm just loading items on my schedule, and I'm basically wondering. So this is basically what's happening here. So I've here this schedule, so I have jobs to do. I make it a little bit easier. So all the jobs take 3 weeks, and the red ones are week 1, week 2, and week 3. And so all jobs take 3 weeks. But I keep on loading items on my schedule, and then the waiting time gets higher, right? And a little bit in a random way. But so the first week I'm working on this one, second week on that one, the third week on that one, the fourth week on that one, and then I go back here, and then here, and then I'm switching. So I'm always working on something, so I'm always busy. But I have many items in my whole calendar. And so if I keep on pushing items here, what will happen? Let's assume I push more items in. What will happen?
More waiting time.
Yeah, more waiting time. The waiting time will increase. The number of items that I'm working on, the working process will increase, but also the waiting time will increase. In other words, the throughput time will increase. So the time between start and finish will increase. So the flow time and the working process are connected to each other, which we saw earlier in Little's law. So if I use a push system, I keep on pushing items there. I'm always busy, always working, but the amount of inventory is growing and growing. And at sometimes I say, oh, wait a minute, I'm working on too many items simultaneously now. But then I'm controlling from the external. We might also do it differently. Say, you can only work maximum on 3 projects at a time. No more than 3. 3 is your max. And so whenever a new item comes in, say, yeah, sorry, I cannot start it because I'm still I'm still working on the other ones. Then it would look like this. Right? So I'm working on 3 items simultaneously, and as soon as I finish something, another one comes in, and then I'm working on that. This is a pool system. Because the maximum, the cap I put to the number of items in my system is 3. What is a better system? This one or this one? From an operations management perspective?
This one.
This one, right?
Yeah.
So from operations perspective, we say that pull is better than push. Because it keeps a cap on the number of items I'm having. So the working process is less, and also the flow time is less, the throughput time is less. I have higher speed. I have less inventory and higher speed. So are connected to each other. Probably this is also the reason why we do sprints and stuff like that nowadays, and all these things, because our number of projects that we're working on is minimal, and we do it very fast. Better system. Push and pull in terms of projects. The only problem, of course, that I'm having is that I cannot cap myself. But that probably should be the way. Okay, that is the difference between push and pull. So to remember, push means that there is no internal control mechanism. You have to control it from the outside. In the pull system, there is a mechanism that internally assumes that you cannot have more than that so many items. Okay, the final thing comes from a very famous book called Gold. You see that? Goldratt has written. Somebody you read the book? Yeah.
More than 10 years ago.
More than 10 years. It's a very old book. I think it's from '84 or something like that. It's one of the most popular books in my field. Did you enjoy the book?
Yeah, it's a two-part. Yeah.
Sorry?
World 1 and World 2.
Yeah, it's written as a novel with a love story and everything in there, but it also has many lessons on operations and supply chain. So it's one of the most popular books in my field, even though it's a very old one. One of the stories that Goldratt writes in there is the person goes with his son and a bunch of Boy Scouts on a hike in the weekend. In the hike, basically they have to walk a certain distance in order to reach the camp, and but he also wants to keep the boys together because otherwise they're lost in the wild, and then of course something is terrible happen. So he wants to keep them together, but also move in a certain pace. And there's a specific problem there because there's one of these Boy Scouts. It's called Herbie. He is a very slow guy, and he also has a very big backpack with all kinds of stuff with him. And so he's slowing down the group. And so basically the whole idea that he comes in the book is that Herbie is the bottleneck. And that if you speed up the bottleneck, you speed up the pace of the entire system. That is one of the underlying stories. So here, this story is a bit translated in soldiers. And the idea is that we have these soldiers here, and these soldiers have to march. And the larger the soldier is, the faster he can march. So here we have Herbie, because he's the smallest one, so he cannot march very fast. And our task here is to move this group forward as fast as we can, but also to keep the gaps small. There's one important rule here: we cannot overtake each other. So this one is first, this one is second, etc. You cannot change that. So this guy cannot say, "I'm big, let me go and see you later." No, he has to stay in line. So everybody has to stay in line. Everybody has a different capacity. We want to move everything as fast as we can, but we also want the group to stay close together. Well, as fast as we can is obviously by the bottleneck. So we cannot go faster than the bottleneck, so we should move at the pace of the bottleneck, but we also have to keep the group together. That is, we have to keep the work in process limited. Because if these guys start moving and this one cannot keep up, then we have a lot of inventory in the entire system. And then Goldratt is wondering, so how could we do this? What are all the options available? And the first idea would be, okay, let's put the smallest guy in front and then the second one. A bit like the Daltons and Lucky Luke, just increasing pace. Since we cannot overtake each other, then this works by itself. And then Goldratt says, yeah, this might be good for soldiers, but doesn't work in real life. Why not? Why can't it be done?
Cannot change the process of creating a product, right?
Yeah, so the first operation. You cannot randomly change that. So you have to keep this order. That's basically what we are saying. Okay, second idea is that we say, okay, let's put the drummer in front. So the drummer is setting the pace. So he drums and everybody marches according to the drum. So we put that here. And then we have a commander at the end who says, come on, people, move on. Hey, soldier number 6, you are slow. And Goldratt said, this is the typical push system. Because we determine the capacity by the first. We determine the pace by the first one. Everybody's just following. And we have an external person, the manager, who is keeping everything together. This is according to Goldratt, the push system. He also has a pull system, and that is by connecting everybody with a rope. So we have a rope associated to it, and you can only walk as far as your rope goes. So you have the rope in your hands, and oh, yeah, Yeah, are you ready? Okay, then I can also move on. And so with the rope, there is a limit to how far we can go. This is the built-in maximum work in process. This is the pull system. And so by connecting everybody, you make sure that everybody moves in the same pace, or at least more or less in the same pace. But of course, Goldmark also comes up with its own idea, and that is known as the drum buffer rope system. And the idea is that the rope is nice, but that you only need to connect the first soldier, the first resource, with the bottleneck. Because the bottleneck is the one who determines the base, so if the bottleneck moves on, then the first soldier can move on, and everybody else has overcapacity, so they can move anyway. Just follow the other guys. And he calls this a drum buffer rope system. What does it mean? Well, this is the drummer. The bottleneck is the drummer. He determines the base. He sets the bases, basically. The rope is the communication system. So as soon as the bottleneck moves forward, then the first soldier can move forward. That's the rope. And there's a little buffer here because the length of the rope is determining how far these people can go apart. So he says this is a kind of hybrid system and in-between between push and pull. So when we compare the three, say, okay, just in case push system, then the drummers here, but everybody's disconnected, hence we need the commander. Here everybody's connected, but the drum lies at the left station, that's the pull system. Here the drummer lies with the bottleneck. And we pull it to the first, and everything else is just simply push. So. No, the stations. Okay. The resources. Yeah. The products flow through. So the more that we move on, the more products we can handle. That's it. Okay, so yeah, let's come up with a nice in-between system. Okay. A little bit time for a review question, just to close it up for today. Okay, so we have a system. First, consider the situation where the process is planned according to a push system. If in that situation the second machine breaks down, this one doesn't work anymore, then the third and the fourth machine will keep on working. And also the first one. Is that true? Oh, what's that? Sorry, the third and the fourth will stop working, but the first one will keep on working. Yeah, we have the push system. Second one breaks down. What happens? What happens to the third? It will stop working. Why is that?
Inventory
Yeah, this inventory is depleted. It's starved, as we say. It doesn't get inventory anymore. Hence, it has to stop. And then one also doesn't get inventory anymore. Also stops. But the first one will keep on working. Why?
Doesn't have feedback from the second one.
It doesn't get feedback. It just has capacity, and whenever the capacity it moves on. So when the second machine breaks down, the first one just keeps on moving. And okay, now we assume that this is a pull system, and that the speed of the entire system is determined by the fourth machine. If in this situation the third machine breaks down, this one is out. Which of the machines will keep on working and which ones will stop working? Pull, this one breaks.
All stops.
Everything stops, right? Why does 4 stop? Because it doesn't get items anymore, it's starved. Why does 2 stop? Well, if I don't take items out of this inventory, then this one doesn't start producing. When this one doesn't start producing, I don't take items here, this one also stops. So in a pull system, when one stops, everything stops. In the push system, that's not the case. Actually, it is considered as an advantage of a pull system. If one stops, everything stops. Why is that an advantage? Why should everybody stop if one stops? Sorry? Yeah, you know something went wrong, and we better focus on what went wrong before we start keep on moving. Otherwise, we're just building up inventory that we might not need later. For instance, this one might stop because the items produced here are defect. Might happen. Why should we then keep on producing? There are defects. But this is the underlying idea. Okay. Finally, assume that machine 3 is the bottleneck. Okay, the Herbie here, the little soldier is here, the bottleneck. And the second machine breaks down. Okay, this one, big soldier, doesn't work anymore. Which ones will stop and which one will keep on working? Two situations. First, the time that this one stops is small. Relatively. What happens to the other ones? Okay, first machine 3. What happens if this one stops for a short time?
It will keep working because 3 is still.
3 will keep on working. Why is that? Because there is still a buffer here. There's still some extra inventory that it will keep on working. And we want that because it's the bottleneck and we want the bottleneck to keep on running. If this one keeps running, then also this one keeps running. What about the first one? Well, whenever the bottleneck moves, it gives a signal to the first machine. You can also move. I'm moving and you can move. So if this one is out for a small period, everybody will just keep on moving. We call the soldiers. This one sits down for a moment. Everybody will just keep on moving until it's too long, because then we are bumping against this guy. But he's big enough to catch up with us, so we don't have to wait for him if it takes. But now this guy is out for a longer period. What then happens? So this one is really something's terribly wrong.
Then machine 3 and 4 will stop.
As soon as the buffer is empty, the bottleneck will stop. If the bottleneck stops, it doesn't give any signals to the first machine anymore, also stops, and this one is starved, also stops. So again, the whole pace is set by the bottleneck. If the bottleneck runs, everybody runs. The bottleneck stands still, everything comes to a standstill. So, this is a hybrid form that we are looking at. Okay, that's it for today. See you in 2 weeks.